Good evening. Welcome to this meeting of the Plans Committee on Thursday, the 14th of August 2025 for Charnwood Borough Council. Could I please ask everyone present to turn off your mobile phones or switch them onto silent to ensure the meeting is distraction-free? May I remind those present that this meeting is being live streamed to the Council's YouTube channel and that by attending the meeting you are giving your consent to being filmed. A notice with further information has been provided in the public gallery. Under the openness of local council bodies regulations, people may also film or record this meeting, and this is outside the Council's control. For those watching the live stream, the Planning Officer presentation has been published on the website for those who wish to view it and can be found on the agenda page for Plans Committee for the 14th of August 2025. Speakers will be called forward at the appropriate time and will have 3 minutes to speak. When 1 minute of time is remaining, they will be advised by the Democratic Services Officer, which in this case is Ms. Dobson. To introduce myself, I am Councillor Jane Lenny. I'm usually Vice Chair of the Plans Committee. However, I will be Chair for the meeting this evening in the absence of Councillor Sandra Forrest, who has sent her apologies. It is considered good practice to appoint a Vice Chair to the Plans Committee, where the usual Vice Chair has stepped up to chair a meeting. Could I ask the committee, are there any nominations for a Vice Chair for this evening only?
I'd like to nominate Lee Hopper-Davis.
Lee Hopper-Davis. Will anyone second that? Okay. Shall we have a vote? Who is in favour of Councillor Lee Hopper-Davis being the Vice Chair for this evening? Thank you. Councillor Hopper-Davis, would you like to join me up here? Thank you, Councillor Hopper-Davis. I would also like to welcome Mr. Max Howarth, our legal advisor for the evening. So we'll go on to the planning agenda now. Item 1 is apologies. Ms. Dobson, have we received any apologies?
We've received an apology from Councillor Charles and Councillor Seaton will be substitute. We've received an apology from Councillor Fryer and Councillor Hopper-Davis will be substitute. And we have received an apology from Councillor Forrest.
Thank you. Welcome, Councillor Seaton and Councillor Hopper-Davis.
Thank you. Thank you.
All busy evening for you now, isn't it? Righto then, so we'll go to the second item on the agenda, which is minutes of the previous meetings. Is the committee happy to confirm as a correct record the minutes of the meeting held on the 17th of July 2025? Can you raise your hands? Oh, well, those of you that were there. Not very many. 1, 2. You get 5 and 6 for me.
2, 3, 4, 5.
And me. Do I count? Yeah, 6. Thank you.
1 abstention. 2.
All right. Right, so the minutes of the previous meeting have been confirmed as a correct record, and I will sign them at the end of this meeting. Item 3 on the agenda is questions under committee procedure 12.8. Ms Dobson, have we received any questions?
Confirm no questions have been received.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is disclosures of pecuniary and personal interest. Ms Dobson, have we received any disclosures of interests?
I confirm I've received a declaration of interest from Councillor Snart in relation to item 5B, which is P232197/2, land off Leicester Road, Markfield, as he is ward councillor for the area and has also received an email from the applicant that confirms that he comes to the meeting with an open mind. Councillor Corey Lowesley has also declared an interest in item 5B, P232197/2, land off Leicester Road, Markfield, and also Councillor Taylor Durant. They've also received the email from the applicant, but confirm they've not read the email and come to the meeting with an open mind.
Thank you. Are there any, are there any other disclosures of interest from members that they wish to make? Are they all likely to be the same one?
All to do with Markfield,
Okay.
the booklet I received in the post,
Oh,
but I didn't read it.
Can I just go round the room so I can? So Councillor Smidowitz, Councillor Infield, Councillor Matthews.
I received a second email from the applicant advising that he wasn't trying to persuade me to vote in favour of that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Monk, Councillor O'Neill, Councillor Palmer. And can I just all check that you're all coming to the meeting with an open mind as well? Yeah, thank you.
right. Oh, Councillor Snart.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think it's the Forest Braggart Ward show tonight. I've also got the item A, P241722, Raphael. That is on my patch as well. I have an open mind and not called the application in. And also the Anstey one is very close to my ward, and I was notified about it. Had no involvement with it, and I come here with an open mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Snart. Oh, and Councillor Matthews.
That's something that I can take back to the head of democracy. Yeah. I don't know if Richard has anything to say on that.
If I may, through you, Chair, and our legal colleague may wish to step in, but I mean, lobbying in the planning process is normal. You can expect this to happen. The important thing is if you've been contacted by an applicant or a lobby group or something like that, that you know, if you come to the meeting, you need to be able to say to the committee that if you've been lobbied, whether you come to the meeting with an open mind or not. And if you feel like your views have been swayed by what you've received, then you'll need to step away from the debate and the vote and sit in the public gallery. You know, there's no problem with people sending you information. There's no problem with you reading it. It's whether or not you feel that you can come to the meeting with an open mind that's most important. And, you know, as we've all heard this evening, you've all received something from the applicant on one of the applications, and you've, you know, variously either decided to read it or not. But the important thing is that you've all declared that you've got an open mind, and that's the key thing.
Are there any other declarations before I move on to the next item? Thank you. So item 5 is planning applications. Item 5A, number P/24/1722/2, Rough Hill, Benscliff Road, Newtown, Linford. I would like to refer to our planning officer, Mr. Ward.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. So this application is a replacement dwelling application, and it's brought to committee because it is considered to be contrary to policy, but the officer recommendation is to approve. So the application site, you can see in red, set in its context, is in what is regarded as countryside. The background map in this case is an extract from the policy map for the emerging local plan. And the light green shading is countryside, dark green shading is open spaces. You'll recognize Bradgate Park on the south. And just immediately across the road, across Benscliff Road from the site is Ling Hill. So an aerial photograph of the site shaded in red. You see the blue line, which includes some more land around the site, north, south, east, and west. And to the north, as well as outside the blue line, is Benscliff Wood, which is a local wildlife site. And on the southern edge, southeastern edge of Benscliff Wood is an area of ancient woodland, which is adjacent to the site, but not in the site. And I'd ask you to note the buildings within the blue line, but outside the red line, just north of the word application on the slide. It's difficult to see the site from any public vantage point, and because of the vegetation, because of the roadside vegetation, because it's set back from the road. So the nearest viewpoint from a public vantage point is from about 300 meters away, further south along Benscliff Road, at the entrance to Hillview House, and you can just about make out the house that's to be replaced, Rough Hill. For those of you who were able to attend the site visit today, you might remember the laneway. So there's about 160 meters of laneway connecting the residential curtilage with the road. That's a tarmac laneway. Trees on either side covered in leaf, of course, as you might expect in the autumn. But there are no views of the house from the site's access. So the existing dwelling then has been on the site for some time. It hasn't been occupied since around 2022. We're not quite, we can't be precise about the date when it was last occupied, but it seems to have been the latter half of 2022. It's not to modern tastes, perhaps, in its interior. It needs a lot of work to make it habitable. But no evidence has been submitted which would suggest that it's beyond repair, and that becomes important later in the conversation. So the grey shape you see is a footprint of the existing building. The red is an extension to the existing building, which was approved in 2022, and the green is the current proposal. So you'll see, of course, that the green area is quite a bit larger than the grey shape that you saw in the first instance, and that's important in policy terms too. But I showed you the most important public vantage point earlier, which was the southern elevation, if you like. So you can see that the frontage of the proposed building is less wide than the frontage of the approved extension. And then setting the whole thing in context, the applicant had kindly provided this map with the blue lines and the red lines, which you might just about see on the screen. Blue line being existing footprint, red line being approved, and then the grey being the proposal is. We'll have noticed that there is difference in level across the frontage of the site. So the lower ground floor wouldn't involve a significant amount of excavation in order to gain access to it, because the ground falls away quite significantly to the northeastern side of the existing dwelling. And then there are 2 floors of accommodation above that. So the lower ground floor has a gym and plant room. The ground floor is all the sort of day spaces, if you like, kitchen and living room, 2 living rooms, and carport. And the top floor has 5 bedrooms. Southeast elevation is the one that is going to be, or would be, most prominent, and the other elevations less so. You can see the cross section through the site, or through the building rather, which shows how the ground floor relates to the existing ground levels and to the proposed ground levels. The design has been evolved during the processing of the application, and this is the design before you tonight. It's a modern interpretation, a contemporary interpretation of traditional themes, and you'll note the use of Swidland stone as the principal material in the elevations, with Swidland slate on the roof. But then it introduces some modern materials too, the grey cladding on the top image. You see the box. Sounds like a pejorative term. It's not intended to be, but on the element to the right hand side on that elevation, which is a bedroom, it's clad in grey metal. Similarly, on the lower view on the screen, the cantilevered element is part of the bedroom accommodation on first floor, again clad in a grey metal. The site is proposed to be, there's quite a bit of landscaping proposed on the site. The applicant has provided some detailed landscaping plans. This is just an extract from one of them. This particular plan looks at the residential curtilage in particular. You might have seen in the officer report that the residential curtilage has been identified on one of the submitted plans, and it extends from you can see the letters N and J on the left-hand side of that plan. So those are the western edge of the residential curtilage, which extends up to the laneway as it wraps around the north of the site, and to the laneway as it wraps around the east of the site. The outbuildings at the top of the screen are relevant to something we'll discuss later. The applicant and the council have engaged quite extensively about ecology and about biodiversity and the necessity to achieve biodiversity net gain. We're not at a settled position yet. We're not at an agreed position, but we're at a point where we can see that there is the potential to achieve the 10% net gain. The principal difference between the parties at the minute is how the post-development habitat on site is calculated in the biodiversity metric spreadsheet that we all use. And the council's position is that everything within the residential curtilage is a private garden, and private gardens are scored very modestly in this metric because people have permitted development rights to do what they want in their private garden within reason. And therefore, whilst the applicant says that they can achieve biodiversity net gain on site, the council is not persuaded that they can. Now, that isn't a reason to refuse permission, because every applicant now is subject to a statutory biodiversity gain condition, and that gain condition requires that a baseline, a post-development habitat value, and potentially an off-site provision are discharged as a planning condition is discharged prior to the commencement of development. So if members decided tonight to grant permission, or to resolve to grant permission for this application, that condition would be applied automatically, and the applicant would need to reach an agreed position with the council before they could commence the development. Similarly, National Forest, it's unusual for National Forest to be an issue in a single residential application, but it's because the site area is quite large, and that's in part because there's a long laneway which is included within the site area. So the site area is in excess of the threshold at which National Forest planting kicks in. And that is, when it does kick in, the requirement is that 20% of the site should be planted in National Forest planting. That's not always trees, but it's generally trees. So that's fine. What's proposed is fine, but that raises another issue for biodiversity, for the assessment of biodiversity. Where you've planted National Forest trees, you can't double count and have other ground level habitats on the same patch of land. So the National Forest planting is fine, but how it fits with ecology is problematic for us still. So there is the same applicant made an application to the council in 2023 for a certificate of lawfulness to retain the to retain what he said were lawful equestrian stud facilities and dog training facilities at the site. So the red line in this case is the application site for that. And you can see there's a bit of an overlap. The red shading is the current application site. So as you can see, there's a bit of overlap between the solid red line and the shading. That application was refused permission and has been appealed and is awaiting the outcome of that appeal. Appeal papers were submitted in March, and we still don't have the decision. So the yellow areas are the horse stud uses described by the applicant in that application now appeal, and the red are the dog breeding buildings. Again, those of you who were at the site today got a chance to see those buildings. They're not in use currently, but if the appeal is successful, then they could be. And the relationship between the kennels and the dwelling is, as you see in that central image, and the separation distance is only about 15 meters. If the appeal were allowed before this decision were made or issued, then the council might recommend an additional condition related to the noise impact from the kennels upon the dwelling. We can't ask for that now because it's not necessary now. The position now is that those uses are not lawful. If the inspectorate came to a different view in a week or 2 or 3, then they become lawful, and we would need to consider whether the noise impact merited the addition of a condition. But for now, we can't. It's not on the list of conditions. So other matters relevant, highways, well, it's an existing access for a dwelling being reused for another dwelling, so no issue from a highways point of view. Sustainable construction is something that we would always require from an applicant by use of planning conditions. Although Old John is visible from the site, and the site is visible from Old John, the separation distance and the site's landscaping context, existing landscaping context with the Benscliff Wood behind it, the rising landform behind it, etc., mean that we don't consider that there is a heritage impact at all, and there is no flood risk. One objector suggested that the site had been the subject of landfill at some stage, but there is no evidence of that, so no concern has been raised by our environmental health colleagues. You've heard all of this before, where we're in a tilted balance position. What are the most important policies for making this decision? It's a full application, so the list is a bit longer perhaps than you've seen sometimes before. So those are all the core strategy policies. They're all up to date, so that wouldn't tip us into tilted balance. But amongst the safe policies are limits to development, CT1. Because CT14, which is the policy for replacement dwellings, is expressed as an exception to the ST2 limitation on development outside limits, that means that ST2 is an important policy, and therefore we are in a tilted balance position in the assessment of this application. I should say that CT14 has 6 criteria which must be satisfied by every application seeking permission to replace. 4 of those are satisfied, 2 are not considered to be satisfied. The 2 not satisfied are that it hasn't been demonstrated to the council's satisfaction that the existing dwelling isn't capable of being repaired. And the second is that criterion 3 requires that any change in size between the original building and the new building should be modest. And this is not considered to be a modest change in size. So those criteria are not satisfied, but we're in tilted balance. So what are the pluses and minuses? So the adverse impact are the conflict with that policy, with CT14, as I've set out, and that this is an isolated home in the countryside, not being in a sustainable location. Now, because this is 1-for-1, that one dwelling for one dwelling, that is given limited weight. But what are the benefits of a single dwelling? And those are limited as well. So the construction jobs is a short-term benefit. Biodiversity and net gain is a benefit, certainly, but it's modest. And there is a design quality improvement. We all have a subjective view on design. To the officer's mind, the design quality in this proposal is extremely good. It's very high design quality. So I think there's a benefit. But do those overcome the adverse impacts? And I would say that they don't. So why are we here? Well, we're here because, why are we recommending an approval? We're here because there is a fallback position. There are 2 fallback positions which this applicant could rely on, and those are material considerations too. So this is the existing dwelling, and it is permitted development to add half the width to the elevation on each side. So the applicant could do that. And if you compare that with what's proposed now, is the proposal any worse in terms of the landscape impact than the existing? Marginal call, I would say. The second fallback position then is that the site has the benefit of a full planning permission to extend, and the bottom elevation is the approved elevation, southeast elevation of the permission to extend. It's bigger. That elevation is bigger. Now, the footprint of the proposed house is bigger than the approved extension, but in terms of impact on landscape, it's that elevation which has impact on landscape. And to my mind, that the proposed development has a lesser impact on the landscape than this fallback position, is of higher design quality, and offers us the BNG benefit that we wouldn't be able to get on the basis of the approved extension. So taking all of those factors into account, I've taken you from left to right and up to down and pass to fail in this presentation. But taking all of those factors into account, the recommendation is that planning permission is granted, with recommendation A being that the biodiversity gain is secured in a 106 agreement, section 106 agreement, and recommendation B that the conditions are applied when the 106 agreement is signed, and with the potential, if needs be, between now and the date that the 106 agreement is signed, and if the appeal is allowed, there may be a need to add a condition. If that arises, then there would be a discussion between the head of planning and growth and the chair and vice chair, with the potential to bring that additional condition back for the endorsement of committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Can I ask, do we need to form that as part of any proposal, the recommendations A and B?
No, Chair, in my view, we don't. The standard wording for condition B allows some discretion to the head of planning and growth to refine conditions in consultation with the chair and vice chair. So it's the standard resolution. We're not asking in this case for any particular deviant.
Thank you. So we now turn to see whether we've got any speakers on this item, but we do not have any notified speakers. So we'll go now to consider questions by the committee members and councillors. Do we have any questions? Please raise your hand. Councillor Smidovic.
It was just the design and the quality of the design. The building must have been a beautiful building in its time with this relevant slate and in keeping with the Switzerland feel. So it's going to be demolished and rebuilt, which I don't think it'll retain the character. The proposal for me is very much what's in fashion now. But if any of the old could be retained, then I would rather see that. But that's a personal view.
Thank you. Councillor Snart.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. A couple of 3 things, if I may, and probably it's through you to ask officers. Just so I understand about the appeal and the bit that we need to put on a condition if it's agreed. Does that mean that the decision notice won't be actually given until that appeal is known?
Councillor Officer Ward.
Thank you for the promotion, Chair.
Sorry.
Okay, so if I take the 2 members' comments in turn, Councillor Smidovic, you talked about the quality of the building and of the existing building being a good example of buildings in its time. This is the eternal debate between modernist architects and conservation officers in planning teams. Should we be looking at the best quality in this time? Should we be striving for that in development? And in my time at Charnwood, I would have to say that this is one of the best examples of design quality. And I think that it attempts to marry the reference to tradition and the use of its materials and the use of its fenestration in some respects with the best of modern architecture, and I think it achieves a good outcome. Now, some of that is subjective, of course, but I think it achieves a particularly pleasing outcome. To Councillor Snart's question, no, the application would proceed from here if members supported the officer recommendation at its normal pace. The conclusion of the Section 106 agreement will take a little bit of time. Could be a couple of weeks, could be a month or more longer. If the appeal decision emerges during that time, then we might have to think again about the conditions. But if it doesn't, then we have to proceed with the conditions before you tonight, because we are making a decision on the facts. And the facts are at the minute that the development is the kennels development is not permitted, and what we have are vacant buildings, outbuildings, with some sort of connection to this dwelling. But at the minute, there is no adverse impact upon the residents, future residents of this building, of this dwelling that seeking permission tonight.
Councillor Snart.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, I understand that, and I think it could be that it gets approved and then we have a problem, I guess, but there we are. The one thing that it might be good to clarify is CT14. It doesn't actually go with two of the bits of the CT14. And just to get consistency, do we look at this as a one-off, if you like, and look at the terms of how it is, and then we can make a decision on that? Or is it something that we should actually say, it should actually meet all the criteria on CT14? What I'm trying to get at is that we're looking at certain things and consistency when we're looking at other applications. So is it just that we're looking at this one tonight and it does meet that criteria in terms of balance, if you like, just so that I understand where we are with CT14?
Yeah, well, CT14 is regarded as being up to date. It doesn't chime, it's not on all fours with the NPPF, but that it permits things that the NPPF wouldn't or doesn't describe, but that's not a reason to mean that it's out of date and therefore has no weight. Many of the replacement dwellings that the council have approved over the last few years have been contrary to CT14 in that the size has been more than a modest change in size. And that's why applications like this are brought to the committee. They are contrary to policy, but on balance, officers think that they should be approved. In this case, the tilted balance is a factor as well, as is the fallback position. So this is a one-off because of its fallback position. Very few of the replacement dwellings that I've seen in my time with the council have a fallback position which is as persuasive as this one. But as you'll have gathered from the presentation, to my mind, it doesn't get over the line on tilted balance alone. It's the fallback position on top. So it's contrary to policy, tilted balance applies, and then fallback is a further material consideration which tips the balance in a different direction and tips it toward approval.
Do you have any more questions?
Just one, and finally, if I may, just to say that if the actual planning application that's there for the extension, if that wasn't there, I think we'd be in a different position, because you're actually saying, I think, and I just get your view on this, that this one is better than the actual original and the actual bit that's been put on in with the application that has been approved. So to me, that is a crucial bit of it in terms of saying yay or nay tonight.
Yes, we're comparing what's before us tonight with the two fallback positions. One is what could be done on the existing dwelling with permitted development rights, and that is to extend its frontage so that the frontage, the only one really that's visible from a public vantage point, is wider than the proposal in front of us now. So the landscape impact would be greater. Then the second fallback position is the extension that has been approved, and its appearance. If you've just measured the area of the plan elevation, which is an odd way of measuring things, but it's useful enough as a tool in this case. So that the area of that approved extension's front elevation is about 30 or 40% bigger than the area of the same elevation in the proposal before us. So the landscape impact is reduced with the current proposal. And then secondly, we can secure this 10% gain in biodiversity with the current application, which wasn't required when the extension was approved in 2022, wouldn't be required for that if the applicant chose to proceed with that application. That permission was granted in December 2022 with a 3-year lifespan to commencement. So there are still 5 months left before that one would time expire. So the applicant, I haven't checked whether conditions have been discharged or not, but assuming that they had, the applicant could bring a digger in the morning and begin work on that. But in officers' view, what's proposed now is betterment in terms of landscape and BNG.
Madam Chair, thank you, and thank you, Ms. Ward. From that and what you've said, I propose that we go with officer recommendation.
Thank you. I'm now going to ask the committee to vote on the proposal by a show of hands. Pardon? Oh, Councillor Inslee. Have a talk then, thank you.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to make a couple of comments about this proposal because for me it seems very finely balanced. So part of this was set off by reading that, sustainable construction materials are being recommended if this building is built. However, if we step back and say, is the demolition of an existing, and today I saw it and it looked pretty solid and sound, well built out of stones, wood and slate, demolition of that and replacement by any building, however one attempts to be sustainable, is not a sustainable practice, of course, overall. It's very environmentally impactful, and we should consider that. So there need to be very good reasons if someone's going to be allowed to do this. And a lot hangs, as we've heard, on the fallback and our interpretation of that fallback, our feeling. Did we really think that the extended picture of the property that has been permitted is that much worse or better than the proposed? They're very different. I myself would actually prefer the extended existing construction. I wasn't completely impressed by some of the novel architectural features of the proposal. So I personally, I think, would not support this. But I do recognise that it's very finely balanced, and I just wanted to express that view. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Inslee. Does anyone else want to make any comments? Councillor Monk.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say, I really like it. I know everyone's tastes are different. I think it will make a great family home, and I'm happy to support it.
Thank you. Any more? Right, well, so we'll proceed now to vote. We've had a proposer and a seconder in favour of officer's recommendation. Can I please ask the committee to vote on the proposal by a show of hands for? Nine.
That's 9-4, Chair.
Any against?
It's 2 against.
Thank you.
So that motion is carried.
Any abstainers? That's it, isn't it? Thank you. Right, that's that item over. We're going now to item 5B, which is planning number P/23/2197/2, land off Leicester Road, Markfield. I'd like to refer to our planning officer, Mr. Ward.
I've been demoted again, Chair. I was Councillor Ward last time. Okay, so this application is full planning application for a 72-bedroom residential care home with those ancillary features that you see on the screen. So where in the world is it? It's right on the edge of the borough. In fact, it crosses the boundary. So it's a cross-boundary application. The boundary is on the roadside hedge, which we'll see in closer view in a second. The bit between the hedge and the highway is within Hinckley and Bosworth's borough, and Hinckley and Bosworth have already brought their part of the application through their planning committee in June with a resolution to grant permission on condition that permission was granted by Charnwood. Otherwise, you would have an access to nowhere. So the application site is a slender site sandwiched between Leicester Road and the A50 to the north. There's a bus stop just outside the site on the same side of the road, and a bus stop buses traveling the other direction just opposite. Also in the context, you'll see the northernmost dwellings in Markfield on Leicester Road, and you'll see a cemetery. This is the application site. So the funny little bit of the red line that juts out toward the north, just under the word site, is the bit that's within Hinckley and Bosworth. So those of you who visited the site today will have noted that it's quite steeply sloped, falling from Leicester Road toward the A50. And then the trees on the top of the first image, on the left-hand image, are on the embankment serving the A50. The A50 is at an elevated position by reference to the site, but the embankment from that elevated highway down to the site is treed, with heavily mature trees. The right-hand image, you'll see a large specimen tree in the middle of the shot, which is to be retained. So, what are the key issues? And there are a bunch of them. The principle of development is a tricky one because it's not within a settlement. Landscape and trees, we'll talk about. Ecology, we'll talk about. Residential amenity is an important one for the future residents of the residential care home. Design, layout, affordable housing, sustainable construction, highways, open space, flood risk, and community infrastructure. So, dotted line is the boundary between the boroughs, with Charnwood on the northern side of the orange line and Hinckley and Bosworth on the southern side. So the starting point for this consideration is whether there is a need for this type of specialist housing. And sometimes we can be careless with the language we use, and there are different aspects, different types of older people's accommodation, and we need to ensure that we're considering precisely the correct form of older person's accommodation. And in this case, it's residential care homes. It's not a nursing home, it's a residential care home. So as the description says, that's a home with individual rooms with full-time care for daily living needs. Not designed for independent living, and may include a bit of dementia care. The need for this type of accommodation was considered both in the Charnwood Housing Needs Assessment of 2020 and in the Leicester and Leicestershire Housing and Economic Needs Assessment of 2022. Lots of numbers on that screen, but I want to draw your attention in particular to the black and green shaded numbers toward the bottom. So the number of the current shortfall when those two reports were published at their separate dates was that according to Charnwood's assessment in 2010, the shortfall was 342. According to HENA in 2022, there was an oversupply of 47. So there's a fairly significant difference between those numbers. But if you look at the additional demand that's likely to arise between now and the end of the next decade, the two numbers come closer together. So we're looking at somewhere between 350 and 400 additional residential care spaces, bed spaces needed between now and then. Those projections don't take account of the loss of residential care spaces that arise from changes of use away from residential care, and we have a number of applications before us at the moment, and some already determined, which would see the loss of some existing residential care bed spaces. Standards change, operators don't see the commercial benefit in upgrading to the latest standards, so close the operations. So the actual shortfall between now and the end of the next decade is likely to be somewhat higher than that. And whilst we have housing policies which are intended to capture all of the housing need, including this form of specialist care, those specialist care sites are not coming forward. So the proposed development is the sort of Z shape, if you like, on its side, or S shape on its side, within the site. So the right-hand side of the site is not proposed to be developed. It has high biodiversity value and is not being proposed to be developed in this case. But the footprint is, as you saw there. So some cross sections through the site. Because the site is so steeply sloped, when you're standing on the site, it feels as though it's steeper than even these cross sections would indicate, or that even the photographs would indicate. But the applicant's design solution is to have a split level floor plan with 2 stories on the Leicester Road side and 3 stories in part of the A50 side, the northern side. So on the lowest floor, on the lowest level, there are proposed to be staff rooms and service rooms, laundry, kitchens, that kind of thing. So this is the lower ground floor plan, 396 square meters. The ground floor plan, almost 1,700 square meters. You can see the different bedrooms, 16 bed wing to the left, 19 bed wing to the right, with the usual sort of shared spaces, common rooms, quiet rooms, bathrooms, sluice rooms, nurse stations, etc. Some of those opening out into the gardens, some with private outdoor spaces. The yellow are the private outdoor spaces proposed for the residents of those rooms adjacent, and the blue are the common outdoor spaces at ground floor level. And then on the first floor, similar sort of floor plan with 2 outdoor terraces proposed for the convenience of residents primarily living on the first floor. The elevation to Leicester Road, the top one is the architectural elevation. The lower one is what might be seen behind the hedge. So the existing roadside hedge at Leicester Road is to be retained. So aside from the formation of the entrance, the rest of the scheme, the rest of the development would be hidden behind the existing hedge. So elevations from the 2 ends, looking northward and looking southeastward. So the northeast elevation is the one toward the A50. And the yellow windows are the residents' bedrooms, and the blue dots are the proposed outdoor spaces with our residents' lounges. They're not, the first floor one doesn't have an outdoor space. On the left-hand side doesn't have an outdoor space. So ecology then is, as I say, the area on the right-hand side of the site has high biodiversity habitat value and is to be retained and protected. But nonetheless, there is a biodiversity net loss on site of, you can see it's minus 4.59 habitat units and minus 0.19 hedgerow units. These will need to be offset off-site. Landscaping plan addresses much of that. So there are 2 outside areas, external areas, which would be landscape gardens for the benefit of the residents, Area 1 and Area 2. There is a security fence that wraps around those outdoor areas to keep residents safe. And then there is a biodiversity exclusion zone fence. So everything to the right of that purple line is excluded from residents and staff access. There is an impact on trees. So there is you can see the little blue quadrant on tree T7, which is a part of that tree that overhangs a proposed turning circle within the internal layout. Similarly, trees T4 and T5 are a bit closer to the building than would normally be comfortable, which might lead to temptation to lop branches or fell trees. But that's a concern that we have attempted to address by the use of planning conditions. Those of you who visited the site today remarked on the sound level of noise coming from the A50. And that has been a challenge throughout the consideration of the application. Those numbers you can see, 53 decibels, 59 decibels, 61 decibels, are the predicted noise levels with mitigation. So the target outdoor, the maximum target outdoor decibel level is 55, but the guidance, the relevant guidance is found in British Standard 233 2014, and it allows some discretion in locations which have a particularly high background noise level. And that discretion is available when the occupant has the option to go to a quieter space, which is below the threshold. So the grey area on that plan is below the threshold, and that provides the alternative. And the applicant is providing an acoustic fence around the right-hand side, the sort of triangular shaped area. But even with that attenuation, the noise levels are still higher than the targets within the British Standard. So other matters to be considered: highways. Hinckley and Bosworth have already considered the access, and the Local Highways Authority had no objection, subject to conditions and obligations. Affordable housing is not considered to be viable across the borough for this type of development. It was considered during the preparation stages for the emerging local plan, and viability assessments were undertaken, and because the margins on the operating of these types of accommodation are modest, it was considered not viable to seek open space or to seek affordable housing. It's not the place to have a public open space, of course. Flood risks is negligible, and minerals safeguarding is exempt. Because this site is not compliant with policy, sorry, I should take you through the policies first. Which are the most important policies? Again, similar list, full application. So we've got everything from design quality to landscape biodiversity, local road network, delivering infrastructure, etc., which are all up to date. But we have the two policies in the saved local plan, which are out of date, which tip us into the dreaded tilted balance. So what are the adverse impacts? Well, it's contrary to the development strategy for Charnwood in that it's not adjacent to one of Charnwood's sustainable settlements. But we don't live on an island, on Charnwood Island. We have to acknowledge that the settlement which it is adjacent to in Markfield is a sustainable settlement. So whilst it's contrary to our policies, it's not an unsustainable location. There is an impact on landscape because it's a green field and it's proposed to be developed, of course. There is a minor impact because of the impact on the trees that we talked about earlier. And the noise environment is a moderate adverse impact after mitigation and conditions. If it wasn't for the mitigation and conditions, that would be a significant adverse impact and could have resulted in a different recommendation. But we've worked with the applicant to consider what the mitigations are, and we have reached what both parties think is a workable solution. What are the benefits? Well, the significant benefit is the provision of this form of specialist housing. And once the housing allocations in the emerging plan are intended to capture everything, there just aren't applications coming forward on those allocation sites for this type of residential care. Business rates, no weight is given to that typically. Construction jobs is a limited weight. So on balance, the recommendation is to grant planning permission, subject to obligations, the 4 types of obligations set out: securing of biodiversity, some of which will be on-site, some off-site, highways, travel packs, etc., for the staff at the premises, £23,000 toward Markfield Medical Centre, and £7,000 to National Forest in lieu of planting. The site is above the National Forest threshold. It attracts planting, but in this case, the National Forest Company said that they would prefer to have a sum of money in lieu of the landscaping. And recommendation B relates to the planning conditions which you see in the committee report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. We have two speakers on this item, and the first speaker I have on my list is Mr. Alan Kell. Are you okay with the operation of this stall? Yeah, so there's going to be a timer set for 3 minutes, and when you've got 1 minute left, the Democratic Services lady will let you know and remind the speaker. I have to remind you that you can continue. Oh, hold on. Oh, at the end of your speech, at the end of your speech, you can either leave the meeting or go back to the public gallery. So off you go.
Right. I'm objecting to it. I've not emailed any of the councillors here for any reason or anything. But the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is government to do nothing. This is why I'm here speaking on behalf of numerous residents of Markfield who think this proposal of the care home is a thoughtless, inappropriate and ill-conceived idea. The location, there's no place for anything to build really, let alone a care home. Chermwood Borough Council refused the planning permission for 4 stables, which is P/97/01441/2, stating that any building will be an unwarranted intrusion of new development into open countryside, which would be detrimental to its character and appearance. And my next door neighbour at 130 has also had 2 planning permissions refused when they tried to extend their house. A care home would be even more intrusive than a set of stables. It would be far too noisy for any of the residents, which it states one of the reports that you've received. It's too noisy now for the residents, and we don't live in between 2 busy roads. A fence won't stop the noise, and surely the residents of that age would want peace and quiet. There are already 2 care homes within the village alongside warden-controlled accommodations. On the outskirts of the village, there's another care home surrounded by a retirement village. The site is situated between 2 busy roads. Some of the residents only turn left out of their properties for safety reasons, and the current owners only turn left into it as well. At times, when incidents happen on the M1 or A50, and at peak times, the tailbacks along Leicester Road can be up to the Fieldhead Island past the cemetery, which have been sent photos of, and it was this morning. Oh, bloody hell. The traffic goes across over the speed limit quite often, sometimes being over 60 miles an hour. There's been 2 incidents mentioned of 134, and they had a car written off with a car speeding off the island. There'll be additional traffic, residents' vehicles, staff vehicles, amenities. Surely it'll be better for nothing to be built. It's better than prevention of any accidents or even fatalities. There are currently no crossings proposed across there. The additional patients and pressure on Markfield Medical Centre, a one-off payment won't mitigate for any sustained additional patients and pressure. There'll be destruction of hedgerows and stuff. There's bats, foxes, badgers, hedges have all been seen along there, as well as nesting birds. The prevention it'll destroy them. Nature can't feed on concrete. The development is within National Forest. And they've been consulted, but the Chelmsford Forest Geopark haven't.
Mr. Kelp, I'm afraid your time is up.
Yeah.
Thank you. We have another speaker on this item, which is Paul Stone. Are you familiar with the speaker equipment, Mr. Stone?
I'm just about to do, I think. Press that one?
That's it.
Yeah, I am then.
Hold on, switch it off a minute. You've got 3 minutes to speak, and when there's 1 minute remaining, our Democratic Services officer will let you know.
Thank you very much and good evening, everybody. We work very closely with your officers to deliver a very high quality care home that will meet clearly identified local needs, as Mr Ward has identified. We've submitted a robust needs survey, which is supported by your officers, and this shows a large deficit over the next 5 to 15 years. The care home has been designed by an award-winning architect who specialised in care home design. A high-quality development will be delivered. It will also have high energy efficiency with PV panels and air source heat pumps. We have dealt with all the technical inquiries that have been raised by the various consultees and revised the scheme accordingly to meet the council's requirements. There's agreement that matters relating to transport, drainage, the impact on biodiversity, national forest contribution, landscape impact and noise have been resolved. Your environmental health officer has had no objections to this proposal in terms of residential amenity. The proposal will also create jobs in the locality. I think the presentation before you didn't quite pick up on the fact that part of the planning balance is that it will create a large number of jobs in the immediate locality, and history with care homes shows that most people tend to live very local to the care home when they get their posts. We think this should be afforded quite significant weight in the planning balance. And there's also the biodiversity net gain, which should also achieve some weight. Having had very close family contact with care homes over the last 3 years, I realise personally more than ever that they provide a very good community facility. I think it's a little bit of a misnomer that everybody that goes into a care home wants peace and quiet. Some people do want peace and quiet, and the orientation, the design of care homes is such that they will find that. But some people still want to see activity and hear things and see things. And I think it's equally important to make sure that accommodation is geared towards those needs as well. So it's not just a place where people go and sit in a room and don't leave every day. It's somewhere which is a very active community where people sort of get involved in all sorts of community activities. And so having some activity, whether it be the traffic or the noise or the birds singing or whatever, is quite important to those residents. We agree with the officer recommendation and to the 37 conditions set out in the report before you and the terms of the Section 106 agreement. This includes delivery of the BNG, a contribution to healthcare, travel plan packs and a national forest contribution. In conclusion, we feel that a very good scheme will be delivered that helps to satisfy a local identified need. There are no technical or legal matters that will prevent delivery. There are no consultee objections, and we have satisfied all the requirements that have been asked of us. I hope that you can support the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stone. Right, the committee has listened to the speakers and the planning officer. If you would like to comment on this application, please raise your hand to indicate. Councillor Corey Losley.
Thank you, Chair. So I have a question of two parts, if I may. Firstly is about noise, and then secondly we'll come on to the tilted balance. So if we go, I think it was slide number 42, which shows the decibel level outside of the property. And am I right in saying, I think, Mr. Ward, that 55 is the limit for outside noise when there is an internal, when there is a other space to go to, if that's correct? So that's 53 there is very close, and that's the part of the application that's facing away from the busy road. So that worries me a bit. We're only within 2 decibels, and I assume it's likely to be within the margin of error for whatever study supports this. That's outside. Obviously, it's not been built yet, so we can't test it inside, can we? But what mitigations are there for, will there be for noise internally? You know, sometimes even with double glazed windows, if you sat next to a busy road in a building, you can hear it quite loudly. And on a previous slide, we did see that the bedrooms are facing the A50 as well. So what reassurances can we have about internal noise, especially given that the outside noise away from the property is so close to the limit?
Thank you. Well, decibel numbers are logarithmic, so the difference between 53 and 55 is fairly significant. It's not a margin of error type of figure. We do have higher figures than 55 in the right-hand side, in the yellow and the red areas of 59 and 61. So those are higher than the pretty standard recommendation, but it's a recommendation with caveats, and those caveats make provision for development in noisier locations, and those say that if you have an alternative place to go to find a quieter space within the British Standard recommendations, then it's acceptable to have some outdoor spaces that are a bit noisier. As for the internal noise levels, the applicant has submitted an acoustic impact assessment or noise impact assessment, which makes recommendations on how to control the noise inside. So the glazing, particularly on that northern elevation, would have acoustic properties which are designed to reduce the decibel level from the incident level, which would be what's measured on the outside of the wall or outside the window at around 65-ish decibels, to the 30 to 35 decibel level inside, depending on the time of day. So those recommendations within the noise impact assessment are conditioned to be delivered upon within the development.
Okay, thank you very much. And then my second question was about the balance, and it's not really a question, it's just a point of clarification. So if we go to slide 45, where that's broken down for us, sort of against the application, I suppose, we have significant impact, minor impact that's mitigated by conditions, and we've got moderate impact that's not, well, after mitigation and conditions. So that remains even with the recommendations in the report. And in favour, we've got one significant, one that doesn't count, and then a limited. So it's only 3 there. So to me, that in principle, that seems a little unbalanced. But from this, are we right to assume that the provision, that the benefit we're getting from provision is enough basically on its own, with the limited weight from construction jobs, which must only be small, to outweigh all of those other impacts? Is that right?
Well, it's not unqualified. It's not that the benefit is unqualified. If the other impacts, the negative adverse impacts, were not mitigated in some way, then there is a chance that the significant benefit of providing this accommodation would not have outweighed the adverse impacts. But one of the reasons that this application has been in the pipe for as long as it has, as a late 2023 application, is that we were working with the applicant to address those other impacts. But it is because we don't have the supply of residential care spaces coming forward, because of the demographics that suggest that more of us will be in residential care homes, possibly some people on the top table by the time the end of that projected period in 2041 comes around. The need is growing at a more rapid rate than the supply. The supply has actually been diminishing over recent years, so the need is significant and has significant weight.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. I thought that would be the case, and to be honest, I would agree with all of that, and I am happy to support the recommendations of this application. I won't make a proposal just yet. Let's see what everybody else has to say, but I think that's helpful.
Thank you. Councillor Matthews.
Hi, right, I've just made a few notes here. I think we see a lot of planning applications come through here, as we know. And I think I can safely say, for the first time ever, after hearing everything, I really don't know on this one. After hearing everything, you generally start to think positively about something or negatively about something, and you get a picture in your mind. I don't know on this. I've listened to the objector, I've listened to the agent. I agree with both, which is unhelpful. But some of the things that have come to my mind, the noise. Now, we've talked heavily about decibels. Who can actually really, hand on heart, say they understand what a decibel is? Now, a decibel of 50 decibels to one person could be deafening. To another, it could be barely hear it. They can barely hear it. Depends which way the wind's blowing. Depends on background noise. It's virtually impossible. You're never really going to know until it's built and you're stood in a bedroom at 1 o'clock in the morning trying to get sleep. You're just not going to know. So I think going on about decibels is a waste of time, an absolute waste of time. So it's not helping me on any decision there. The location is odd to me, in my view. It's a strange place to put a care home. You just associate care homes as somewhere peaceful and quiet for a reason. We're talking like junction 22 of the M1 is a stone's throw away. That is noisy in itself. You've got, I mean, I drive down that road regularly. It's a racetrack at night. I mean, you can hear it. It concerns me with how peaceful will it be for people in a residential care home. Also, we've not talked much about access to the site. There's going to be a lot of traffic there. For a care home this big, you're going to need a lot of staff. You're going to have residents who are going to have cars. You're going to have visitors all the time. I don't think there's enough parking there available. You're going to have people climbing the grass verges, blocking driveways. I feel like this could be like outside a primary school. And anyone who lives by a primary school will understand how annoying that is. I don't think there's enough room there for parking. I don't think that's seriously being considered. Also, as well, with regards to the noise, the windows of the property, are they going to be double glazed, triple glazed? Do we know? Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, so there are a lot of issues there. Noise levels. So some of what we're talking about is predicted noise levels. Modeled, there is computer software which models these things, but they're based on actual measurements. So those of you who were at the site today would have experienced the existing noise level at the site. So that was measured by the applicant's acoustic consultants. And what you experienced today was of the order of 65 decibels, because that's what the modeling is telling us the incident level will be on the outside walls if we don't make any mitigation. But you're right, I couldn't tell you the difference between 65 decibels and 62 decibels and 55 decibels, which is why the applicant has employed an acoustic expert and why the council employs environmental health officers who have expertise in acoustics as well. I'm sure the applicant will tell you, if you're speaking to them privately, that they were put through the ringer as far as acoustics were concerned. Between the environmental health officer and the case officer, we asked a lot of questions. We probed and pressed, and the acoustic report was amended a couple of times in order to get to the point where we were satisfied that they had fully assessed every scenario. The glazing, it's not just that it's double glazed or triple glazed, it's also, there is acoustic glazing as well. So the acoustic glazing has a different gas between the panes of glass. It uses different glass itself. It has film, like plastic film, or not, it's probably not plastic, but a membrane within the glass itself. So this science of acoustic glazing, if that's what it is, has been tested over decades probably now. So the evidence is relied upon by those experts, both on the applicant side and on the council side. Traffic, the objector and you, Councillor Matthews, raised issues about the traffic. Traffic modelling is typically done by computer by a piece of software called TRICS, T-R-I-C-S. Don't ask me what it stands for, what the acronym stands for. But TRICS is nationally government sponsored software which collects data from uses of different types throughout the country. So it will have collected data. In this case, it has collected data from existing residential care homes. It's got subsets of data, at levels of detail that we might never need to look at. But in this case, what they've done is to model the proposal against the database of similar active developments across the country to find what the traffic flows are likely to be and what the parking requirements therefore are likely to be. So the application suggests that there would be 15 full-time staff and 10 part-time staff. And those staff would be operating across 2 shifts, the 2 12-hour shifts, 8 till 8. So in the highways and the LTC highways assessment of the proposal, they accepted that those 2 staff changeover times would be outside peak travel hours. So the impact upon peak traffic levels would be negligible. And then I'm sure any of us with relatives in care homes would imagine visiting times, and visiting times are probably throughout the day. Maybe there's a concentration in evenings and weekends even. But the distribution of all of that traffic flow is modelled in this software, and the applicant has relied on it, and LTC have tested it, and they're content that it's satisfactory.
Okay, one of the questions was how many staff. You've already answered that one. Okay. Can you explain this acoustic fence? I couldn't tell you. I've never heard of such a thing. Couldn't tell you what it is. How the hell does it work, and what's it going to do, and what benefits is it going to give to the residents?
Yeah, so in that slide that we were looking at a little while ago, let me scroll back to that again. So you'll see that the noise levels within the right-hand side of the building, the 59 and 61, are above the 65 that we talked about, but that's with the fence in place. If the fence wasn't in place, those levels would be the 65 or so, which is what's described as the incident level on the outside face of the building. Well, I suppose it's not a prison camp, you know. Excuse the. It's about 2.4 meters high. You know, the A5 is in an elevated position in relation to the site. It's there are different versions of them, but typically absorbent material on the other side. So it'll be something like on one side, then covered with a weather noisy side. So the noise hitting that membrane is baffled, so that it's quieter on the lee side.
Okay, so I can't understand why it's not been built all the way unless it's purely a cost thing. It sounds expensive. I can't see how such a small, tiny fence is going to create such a problem. I don't get it myself, but okay. You've helped me a bit. I'm still struggling to understand why this location. It's an odd place. I don't get it. But yeah, I think I think you've answered everything, but I'm on the fence big time with this one.
Thank you, Councillor Matthews. Councillor Palmer, please.
Thank you, Chair. Right, I have to take my specs off to read my notes. I also think this is not a great site for a care home, whether or not we need extra spaces in care homes. The open countryside, and I don't agree with that, particularly unless it's absolutely necessary. Again, the noise levels are concerning. I mean, even if those people who are in the care home want lively surroundings and not peace and quiet, I'm sure that the noise from the busy roads isn't the sort of sound they want. And research has found that noise living near a busy road is stressful, even if it's subliminally stressful. And also I had a question about the acoustic fence. As it's built around the ecological site, how will it affect wildlife? Okay, thank you.
Well, if I start at the end, there are 2 fences, well, actually 3 fences proposed. One is a biodiversity exclusion zone fence. So that'll just be a low fence. That'll just be a 2-rail fence or something like that. which deters people from walking all over the habitats. And that's further to the right of the site layout than is shown on this. So the acoustic fence doesn't interfere with wildlife habitats. What's inside the acoustic fence is the garden. So we talked in the last application about how the biodiversity value in a garden is regarded as being very modest because people can do what they want. You're gardening, you're digging, you're mowing lawns, you're doing all sorts of things that are likely to reduce the habitat value within that area. So it's only that landscaped area that is within the acoustic fence. But the reason that the acoustic fence is not wrapped around the entire building is because it would it's 2.4 meters of solid fence. So it's only intended, so its only purpose is to provide a degree of acoustic shelter for this outside space, which would be visited on some occasions by residents, probably more often in weather like this than the winter months. But while the residents are inside the building, the other measures proposed in the noise consultant's report and conditioned in the recommended conditions would ensure that the enjoyment of the peace and quiet that you might want indoors is secured. And then in addition to the measures proposed by the applicant, we've added conditions which seek further acoustic protection. So if you remember in one of the slides, I was showing some private outdoor spaces for some of the bedrooms. At the minute, those are not acoustically protected, acoustically baffled. Residents have a choice to use them or not use them, keep the doors closed and it's quiet, open the doors to access those patios and it's a bit noisier. But the suggested planning condition then would require that those are acoustically screened as well. Now, the solid acoustic fence is probably not the right solution for there. It's something that would have to be discharged in a discharge of conditions at a later date. As to the choice of location, part of the evidence of need that the applicant submitted was about the need across two boroughs, Hinckley and Bosworth and Charnwood, and the Henner report that I referred to in 2022 looks at all of the boroughs within Leicestershire and looks at the need across all of them. And I suppose this is a fairly central location, a fairly accessible location for people who might come to visit. But it's also a sustainable location, which, going back to one of Councillor Matthews' points about the levels of parking, because we've got a bus stop just outside the door, because it's right on the edge of Markfield Village and is walkable for staff and visitors if they happen to live in Markfield. The predicted level of parking is a bit less than might be the case if it was set out on an isolated field somewhere. But in terms of sustainable locations, a sustainable location for any type of development is always going to be adjacent to a sustainable centre, and with that comes a degree of noise, and with if it's on a greenfield site, with a change to the landscape character is inevitable. That's adverse. Something that is green and becomes grey is an adverse impact, and it's one of the things that is counted as an adverse impact in the planning balance at the end. But this significant shortfall, significant need for this type of accommodation just isn't coming forward. We're just not seeing applications that are going to address this need in the last few years at least. Things might change in the future. I think these are commercially operated projects, but we're all aware of the numbers of residential care homes that have been closing and all of the reports in the media about how difficult it is to make ends meet within those operations. So we have an offer of this type of accommodation in the borough. Is it of benefit to us? Damn right it's a benefit to us. Is that benefit does that benefit outweigh some of those harms that we all acknowledge? It's not ideal. It's not an ideal site. But the factors that make it less than ideal can be mitigated by conditions, and that's what we've tried to do. The agent who spoke earlier talked about the 37 conditions. 37 conditions is a lot of conditions for a full planning application. And again, that speaks to the scrutiny that this application has had, and how we all want to ensure that, you know, all of the concerns that you've all expressed today are concerns that officers have had too in the consideration of this application. But we think that with the iterative design that the applicant has engaged in and the conditions that we've recommended, that we have addressed those adverse impacts as best we can.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. Do you have any more questions, Councillor Palmer?
No, thank you very much.
Councillor Seaton, I believe you wanted to speak.
I did. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. All I've heard, sorry, let's start with a question. Going to the fence, the acoustic fence, it's just a bloody big fence. But we have got one at Arriva bus station, and it does work. You know, it absorbs the sound. But of course, that's just buses idling and next to their depot. But it does work on there. But we're not talking about speeding cars going past 24/7. The other question or statement I wanted to make was highways. They're not objecting to it at all. Not even a slight question mark. It's just the trip generation, junction capacity, internal layout, the transport provisions and the travel plan, and the highway safety. If I refer back to the highway safety, I think one of our speakers was saying about crossing, and I can't see on here whether there is a crossing to get across the road anywhere. So that would be probably problematic for me, but that wouldn't be something that would stop a development from developing. I've heard, as I say, a lot about the sound and the location not being good, which is all very well and good, but nobody's come up with a reason why. You know, we have to think of why, a planning reason why this application does not tick all the boxes, does not satisfy. And all of the comments that I've heard so far, I haven't made any doubt in my mind, and I would like to propose officers' recommendation to accept this site. And of course, it's a matter of choice. It's private. It's a commercial thing. And if somebody does, these old people, counting you and me together, Duck, you know, we might really thrive in a bustling place. We're not always doting, you know. Oh, I've lost. That's AI just started. I don't know what question it thought I was asking there. Yes, I'd like to go with officer's recommendation to pass this application. Thank you.
Councillor Smidovic.
Thank you. I had most of my. Thank you. Thank you. I had most of my questions answered by the officer on site, but the noise was horrendous. It really was horrendous, and I sympathise particularly with this speaker. Well, both speakers, I could accept what they were saying to a certain extent. What I was going to ask was, I was told about the windows and the acoustic panels with the side facing most of the noise of the road. But the comment was at the time that windows could be opened when people weren't in the room. Well, at night time, there are going to be people in that room in their beds. And I think the traffic will continue, perhaps not as loud as the daytime travel. But my question was going to be, if it's summers like this and elderly people are staying in rooms, I would hate to think of them virtually having to lock themselves in because of the noise. So I would like a condition placed that on those rooms that face the road, which is particularly loud, that you could have air conditioning put in, and I don't know whether that would absorb fumes from outside, which would worry me. I take that point, but whether it also cleanses the air as it goes through. So I've lived in very hot countries, much hotter than this summer, but nowhere was there not air conditioning, particularly at night. So that would be my main concern. And I did ask about parking when we were on site, and I hadn't worked it out at that time, but there's 34 spaces and 25 full-time staff. That leaves 9 parking spaces for a 72-bed residential. So I was sort of thinking, well, if a quarter of the visitors came, that's still quite a lot of parking and cars, assuming some would catch a bus. But I couldn't make out on the plan where the cars would be. Whether it was actually on there, I don't know, but I couldn't see it at the time. So I'd like the point about air conditioning investigated and the parking spaces. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, on the air conditioning, it's not air conditioning specifically, but the overheating of rooms is considered as part of the noise mitigation recommendations, and that it's conditioned that there would be provision made for overheating. Now that's the detail of that consideration is a matter for the building regulations rather than for planning. What planning needs to be concerned about is that the noise is mitigated, first of all, that the residential amenity is comfortable. And with the windows closed, we are satisfied that the desirable acoustic levels are achieved. Now, that's not to say that people can't choose to have their windows open, or that the room might be ventilated at different times. Some people like to throw the windows open first thing in the morning and ventilate the room. That's available to residents, but it's not necessary for cooling. For cooling, there will be a mechanical cooling system that operates throughout the building, particularly in the rooms on that side, on the noisiest side. So that is one of the mitigations recommended in the noise impact assessment, and it is secured. As to the staff parking levels, although there are 25 staff, they won't all be working at the same time. There will be 2 shifts, first of all, and those are 12-hour shifts. So it's to be expected that people will only work 3 shifts or maybe 4 shifts in a week, 36 hours or 48 hours in a week. So the staff parking requirement will be much less. It'll be less than half because people won't be working every day, and only the staff levels in the evening overnight will be lower than the staff levels during the day. So there will be more spaces available for visitor parking than the 34 minus 25 that you calculated.
Councillor O'Neill.
I did want to say something. I wanted to make the point that I think the need for this sort of accommodation is crucial. I think as a society we always look for the next 2 years, 3 years.
Can you please be quiet in the public gallery while our members are speaking? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I think we need to look a bit further ahead than that. And I know some people have been rather jovial about that, but it is actually a crucial issue, I think, ageing society and the needs of those residents. In the report, page 120, it says the building is overdeveloped for the site. That's paragraph 9.6.28, and I wondered if Mr. Ward wanted to comment on that. And my question was, Mr. Ward said that the biodiversity offset, he mentioned 4.9 units. Now, I don't know whether 4.9 units biodiversity offset is a lot or a bit or what. So could you give us some idea about the magnitude of that 4.9 units. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so on biodiversity units, those 4 point, whatever it is, units that the applicant will have to buy off-site are likely to cost in the region of £30,000 per unit. So we're talking about compensation to an accredited off-site provider payable by the applicant, by the developer, in the order of £150,000. So in that sense, it's a significant sum. There is a massive incentive, you would imagine, based on that, for applicants to provide as much of the biodiversity on-site as they can, because the cost of planting is going to be a lot less than the cost of buying those units from elsewhere. But in this case, because, and this is the other question you had was about overdevelopment, this is one aspect of what might be considered as overdevelopment. You know, I mentioned the impact on trees. So if the building were pushed a little bit further north, it could have avoided that impact on trees. We have the noise from the road. If the building were pulled a little bit further south from the road, the impact of the noise would be reduced a little bit. Distance doesn't make a lot of difference, but it makes a bit of difference. And then the biodiversity provision, we're not able to provide, or the applicant's not able to provide the biodiversity net gain on site, or not net gain, but no net loss, in this case, on site. So those three factors combined suggest that a smaller building would have been more comfortable on the site. So that's one of the adverse impacts that weighs in the planning balance. At which, you know, going back to Councillor Matthews' point from earlier, this is a difficult decision. It is a finely balanced decision, and I guess that's our job collectively. We make these balanced decisions. You know, sometimes things are black and white. Sometimes there's a lot more grey involved, and we're certainly in one of those. And this is a finely balanced decision, finely balanced recommendation. The decision hasn't been taken yet, but on the basis of that balance, we recommended that permission be granted. Yeah, and the other factor as well, which is relevant to the provision of residential care homes, is that the size of the operation goes to viability. So it's often cited, and there are many reports to support this, that a care home of 70 or fewer bed spaces is not viable. Well, the threshold's around there. It might not be 70, it might be 65, it might be 60, but it's of that order. So in order for economies of scale and efficiency for the operator, any care home, we talked earlier about the number of care homes that are closing. Many of those are smaller than that, and part of the reason that they're closing is because it's inefficient to operate a 30-bed or 20-bed care home. It needs to be of this sort of size in order to be viable. So yeah, many factors that lead to this question about whether this is overdevelopment of the site. But in officer's opinion, the benefit outweighs the impact.
Thank you for that. I would like to support the proposal that we support officers' recommendations on there. I'd like to second that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Snart.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just going back to the overheating situation, I noticed that on page 82 from the Chartwell Council Environmental Health, it says overheating needs to be considered with the windows closed. Agrees that the redesign of the building might be necessary. Did that redesigning happen, or are we still in the problem around overheating? And could you explain to me, because I believe that an air conditioning unit in those areas are vital. What's the difference between a mechanical and the air conditioning unit?
Yeah, so well, the difference first of all is that air conditioning is typically refrigerated, so it's a fridge essentially with a fan on it, which is efficient in small spaces. It's not so efficient across, say, an entire residential care home. So.
Can you push your button, please?
Did anyone catch anything I said? Yeah. Right. So if you for a building of this magnitude, you'd need a ducting system. You could, if you wanted to put an individual unit, say, in one room, with splits on the walls or hanging units from that are suspended underneath the false ceiling, you could do that. But you'd have each individual unit would have to have a condensing unit outside with refrigerated pipes. You'd have to run 2 pipes of cable. You'd need a 240 volt supply to the to each one. That would be. It would be expensive to do that, and you'd have, if you're going to do one room, you're going to want to do another, you're going to want to do another, and you're going to have condensing units hanging from the walls outside all around the building. The only way you can air condition this is a ducting system. And to do that, you'd need a massive, humongous condensing unit to do it. And that condensing unit could easily be the size of this space here. And it's extremely expensive. You probably even need an ammonia system rather than a refrigerated CFC system. Usually with those massive condensing units, you see them, if you can picture what it would look like, the best way I can describe it, you look on a great big massive skyscraper or something like that, you can see them sitting on the roof. And with the great big massive fans on, that's one way you could do it. But with a building like this, you wouldn't, with a pitched roof, you can't put it on the roof. You'd have to redesign the roof. You'd have to redesign everything because of the ducting system that would run throughout, because it's multiple floors. So you'd have to have ducting throughout across the floor spaces and in the ceilings above. You'd have to have a plant room, so that would need an additional room put in somewhere, and then you'd have pipework and ducting running throughout. You'd need to be a 3-phase system rather than a single-phase system as well, which would need which would be very expensive to install.
Can we keep the questions to a minimum on air conditioning, please? If we could just have the
if you're going to have
basics
individual
from an
systems, you
expert.
need a big, massive, huge mechanical system. Well, it's just, it doesn't matter whether it's mechanical or not. It doesn't make any difference. All we need to know is it going to be air conditioned or is it not?
Right, I think we'll put a lid on that now then. Mr. Ward.
Yeah, at this stage, those are not matters for the planning consideration, but they are necessary. They're conditions on the recommended set of conditions. And those would need to be addressed in the discharge of an application at a later stage. So we don't need to educate the members or the officers about how air conditioning systems work. But it's not likely to be an air conditioning system. It's likely to be a ducted air system, which is where the air is heated or cooled from a central air handling unit somewhere, probably in the basement.
Could
I just say that I think this is one, after being in lots of heat this week, it's important that we get this right. And I'm a little bit concerned that we're actually saying, yeah, we're going to leave it to this. Is it actually down in writing that we're going to have something that reduces the heat generated by having windows closed?
Yes, the noise impact assessment has mitigation measures, has a list of mitigation measures. This is one of the mitigation measures discussed there, and those mitigation measures are secured by condition. And then those conditions will have to be discharged prior to occupation or prior to commencement. And I can't remember which one it is in this case, but it is secured by condition. Yes.
Sorry, I have to come back, Madam Chairman, but it's not in the actual conditions we've got in front of us tonight, is it?
Not on that level of detail, but it is one of the recommendations within the noise impact assessment, and those recommendations themselves are conditioned. It's conditioned that the development should be in compliance with should be undertaken in compliance with the recommendations in the noise impact assessment.
Just one final thing, if I may. Looking at the, and I think one of my colleagues mentioned it about crossing the road in terms of all the actual facilities and retail and everything on the other side of the road. When Hinckley and Boss did theirs, I guess that's in their remit to actually look at that because the road is in Hinckley and Bosworth. Was anything said about that?
You're right that it is outside our borough, and it is a matter for Hinckley and Bosworth. The same highway information was submitted to both councils. Hinckley and Bosworth's recommended planning conditions are follow the recommendations of LCC Highways very closely, and there isn't a recommendation about a pedestrian crossing. Now, there are dropped curbs at the bus stops with textured paving on those drop curbs, which would provide for someone to cross, someone less mobile to cross at that crossing point. But it isn't a zebra crossing or anything formal like that. When members visited the site today, we just looked left and right and crossed. Wasn't particularly busy at that time, but to cross at that moment. But applicant's transport assessment was assessed carefully by LTC Highways and found to be acceptable. And as you say, it's in Hinckley and Bosworth, and it's not a matter for us to deliberate on.
Thank you. Can I ask Councillor Corey Losley, do you still want to speak?
Briefly, Chair, yes, thank you. Councillor O'Neill kind of covered what I was going to say, really. But since I spoke first, there's been quite a lot of debate, and there's some quite legitimate concern among councillors, I think, especially about the noise. But those housing needs assessments are quite stark, and I would absolutely agree with Mr. Ward saying that the tilted balance is in effect, and if we're being offered 72 beds in a care home, that we should absolutely take them. We shouldn't look a gift horse in the mouth. So, yeah, I definitely support this proposal that Councillor Seaton proposed, and yeah, I think we should accept officers' recommendations on this one.
Thank you. Councillor Matthews, do you still want to make any comments?
Kind of made my comment really, although it was about the air conditioning really, and Margaret raised the point. And did you want to see air conditioning in this building? Did you want to see it installed as part of the application? Are you putting an amendment in?
I don't think I can answer that. I would like, if possible.
Because if you want to put an amendment, I'll second that, or vice versa.
Just that I would like condition that if required in those rooms, if the heating is such that we could have air conditioning units put in, because I've seen them in houses. Yes, they're a bit ungainly in the window, with the window coming down onto them, but they wouldn't have to be massive ones. To keep the air cool in a room, we have them in our cars all the time. So if it's building regulations, perhaps the applicant could consider it.
Before you answer, Mr. Ward, I wonder whether you'd consider which way the windows are pointing, which direction the windows are pointing in that are affected by the road noise if those windows were opened.
Well, the noise is on the north side of the building, so it's principally the windows on the northern elevation. But then the noise travels around the corner a little bit too, so it wouldn't be limited to just those rooms. It would also be the ones on the sort of roundabout side elevation, and on the opposite elevation on the north western side of the building as well. Yeah, if I think because some of these are matters that are building regulations, some of these are matters that are addressed in the noise impact assessment. I don't think it's necessary to add a condition, but if members were minded to do so, I think we could. It could satisfy the 6 tests for conditions.
I think Councillor Matthews probably wants to come back on that because it was his question originally.
Councillor Seaton.
I'm afraid we'd still have a few councillors in my list.
Councillor Seaton.
It's Councillor Seaton next.
Thank you, Chair. It was really just to help out a little bit with mechanical and air conditioning. Hotels now don't have air conditioning units because they're noisy. They have a whole cooling system. So that the whole purpose is, yes, a ducting system, but the whole purpose is not to have the rooms at 17 degrees and lower than that, is it? It's to have them at an ambient level, and an air conditioning unit would be just too much over the top. So the air cooling that's filtered around the whole building is more than likely what this building is going to have. That's all.
Councillor Inslee.
Well, it was suggested that we have individual air conditioning units. I don't think that is the solution in a building like this. They're noisy, they're difficult to maintain. What we've heard is that we would have a mechanically ventilated, ducted central air conditioning system. Now, we've heard from the officer that this somehow is implied by the noise, satisfying the noise issues. I don't think it's clear enough there. I think it would help us all if we just simply added text that that's how things need to be done. It may be that that's what they're already planning to do, but it's not made explicit. So I think we put that as a condition alongside and compatible with the noise amelioration plans. Thank you.
Can someone put that amendment into a form of words that can be seconded?
Yeah, I think that was it. So that we should make explicit reference to a ducted, mechanically ventilated central air conditioning system that's temperature controlled. Yeah, of course. I'm sure the building experts within the planning department will be able to tailor that wording to make it precise to their needs.
Mr. Ward.
Yeah, if I can refer members to condition 8. So condition 8 is that, to save you time finding the page, it reads, the development hereby permitted shall be carried out in full accordance with the acoustic performance measures for glazing and ventilation set out in those tables in the environmental noise impact assessment. So it would be straightforward and within the standard recommendations for officers to tweak that wording to more specifically address the overheating concern. Air conditioning is probably, it wouldn't be necessary. It wouldn't satisfy the 6 tests. But overheating, the prevention of overheating is certainly necessary. So the wording there is from, it could be, instead of just saying glazing and ventilation, we could say something about to prevent overheating in individual rooms. We could add that phrase to that condition.
That's already in the conditions. Is it? Are you adding words then?
Yes, the proposal would be that nothing needs to change for now because recommendation B affords some discretion to the head of planning and growth in consultation with the chair to amend conditions, finesse conditions. So the resolution as drafted can stand with with officers having noted that members would like to see condition 8 refined a little bit to specifically address the concerns about overheating. It won't specify an overheating solution. It'll just require that the applicant submits their plan for the solution, and we discharge that in a discharge of conditions at a later date.
Would we be right to, with that in mind, can we go with the original proposal and seconder? So all those in favour, please raise your hand.
That's 9 in favour, Chair.
You against?
So 1 abstention and 1 against.
We'll have a 5-minute break and come back. I forgot where I am now.
Item C.
Right, we're on item 5C of the agenda, which is item number P/22/1394/2, land north of Pollards Road, Amnesty. I would like to refer you to our planning officer, Ms Stone.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening all. Okay, so this application appears on the agenda as the development represents a departure from the development plan and is recommended for approval. In addition, the application has been called in at the request of Ward Councillor Paul Baines and Ward Councillor Deborah Taylor. Okay, so the application site is located to the northeast of Anstey and covers an area of approximately 2.62 hectares. The site comprises a single agricultural field. The site is enclosed on the northern, eastern and southern boundaries by hedgerows and some trees and an area of woodland to the west. A watercourse runs along the northern boundary of the site with agricultural land lying beyond this. To the east of the site is an area of informal public open space and suds features, and to the south is an area of amenity grass and a pedestrian cycle path which runs east to west, both of which are associated with a residential development built by Bloor Homes for 160 dwellings. The application site is not within a conservation area and there are no designated heritage assets within the application site or within close proximity. The site lies wholly within Flood Zone 1. The application site lies outside of the defined limits to development for Anstey, as identified on the proposals maps in the adopted local plan, but it does adjoin the village and has been allocated in the emerging draft Charnwood local plan for residential development for approximately 47 dwellings. The application is submitted in full and seeks permission for the construction of 48 dwellings, a new access off Grays View, alongside associated site infrastructure, public open space, a sustainable drainage feature and landscaping. The proposed development would deliver a mix of open market and affordable housing. Approximately 31% of the dwellings would be affordable, which equates to 15 of the 48 dwellings. The dwellings would include a mix of sizes from 1 bedroom to 5 bedroom. The proposal would include 0.63 hectares of public open space and green infrastructure, and the proposal does not include any play areas within the application site, but there are 2 in close proximity in the adjacent Bloor Homes development. A singular access to serve the development would be created off Grays View to the south of the site. The proposal seeks to reconfigure Grays View, which is currently a cul-de-sac, to facilitate the use of this road. Given there's been a number of objections to the proposed vehicle access arrangements, I thought it might be useful to clarify the proposed changes as shown on this plan. Okay, right, so the existing arrangements show a corridor width of approximately 7.3 metres by way of a shared surface. There is, I'll show you a photo in a little bit, but you will be able to see that separation by the slight change in colour of the paving slabs. This differentiates a 4.8 metre width carriageway and a 1.3 metre pathway either side. The proposed works do not require any changes to the overall corridor width, but a reconfiguration and reconstruction of the road. So the proposal includes a 4.8 metre width carriageway, a 2 metre width footway with a curb adjacent to the eastern side as demonstrated by this pointer, and then a 0.7 metre service strip to the western side. The applicant proposes to reconstruct Grays View as an access road in accordance with the guidance in the Leicestershire Highway Design Guide. To mitigate the lack of footway on both sides, a crossing facility will be provided at the junction with Pollards Road and Grays View as shown here. The new vehicular access will also cross an existing footway cycleway. At the crossing, a raised table will be introduced. The local highway authority have confirmed this measure will reduce the speed of any vehicular traffic to 15 miles per hour or less. And in addition, safety measures will be included either side of the access, such as bollards or staggered barriers to prevent cyclists or wheelers, such as people on skateboard and scooters. They'll slow them down to prevent any conflict. Just on the highways matter, the local highway authority have engaged extensive discussions with the applicant and provided nine observations during the course of the application. The final observations confirm they consider that the safe and suitable access can be provided as shown on this plan. Okay, right, so moving on to the house types. The proposed dwellings would all be 2-storey in height and comprise a palette of materials. When considering the development area only, so discounting the land required for the access, the density would be approximately 21 dwellings per hectare. A range of house types have been proposed, 14 in total, with an emphasis on detached and semi-detached dwellings, alongside a small number of terrace properties. The dwellings have been designed to include a variety of flat-fronted properties, timber canopy porches, external chimneys, and the use of bay windows. I've just provided examples of each size property. So here's an example of the 1-bedroom affordable home. Here's examples of the sort of 2-bedroom dwelling, a 3-bedroom dwelling. Oh, I've done 2 of those. Okay. The 4-bedroom dwelling and one of the 5-bedroom dwelling house type. Okay. For those who weren't on the site visit today, I've just put a few photos in to hopefully show you what's on site. So this is obviously the existing arrangement for Grays View, and this photo is probably not very clear, but there are different paving slabs currently which demark sort of the 1.3 metre either side. You could probably just work it out there. And this is obviously the shared access currently. Okay, this is the existing field access. So currently there is an existing field access to the site using a track off Grays View. As part of the development, it's proposed to make this redundant, block it up and put some more hedging here. Okay, so this shows the existing pedestrian and cycle path in the adjacent Bloor Homes development. The application site runs to the left beyond the existing trees and hedgerows. This photo is taken from, I think you can just see the existing field access. So the proposed new access would be in between, running almost between here. It's in between the existing and the pedestrian walkway here. The site runs along to the right to the woodland, which you could probably just see there. Okay, so this was taken from within the site. This is looking towards the existing Bloor Homes development. That's the existing southern boundary, hedgerow and trees. This is looking towards the west of the site, which is the existing woodland. Okay, so this is looking towards Cropston in a northern direction. You could probably just make out the houses there. And this was taken looking towards Bradgate Park. I don't know if you can see, looks like Old John Tower just there in the distance. Okay, so there are a number of key considerations, and an assessment of each one of these can be found in the committee report from page 189 to 227. Okay, so in this case, because the policies for the provision of housing in the adopted local plan are considered to be out of date, in accordance with paragraph 11D of the framework, the presumption in favour of sustainable development indicates that permission should be granted unless the application of policies in the NPPF that protect areas or assets of particular importance provide a strong reason for refusing the development, or any adverse impacts of permitting the development would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits when assessed against the policies in the framework as a whole, but having regard to key policies for directing development to sustainable locations, making effective use of land, securing well-designed places, and providing affordable housing individually or in combination. In this application, there are no strong reasons for refusing the development arising from the NPPF policies for the protection of assets or assets of particular importance. Therefore, an assessment of the benefits and identified harms have been carried out, and officers conclude that when applying the presumption in favour of development and taking into account all of the material considerations, which includes the weight to be afforded to the relevant policies in the draft local plan, it is considered that the identified harms would not significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits when assessed against the policies in the NPPF taken as a whole. As such, officers consider the proposed development would represent sustainable development, and the recommendation is to approve the application in accordance with Recommendation A and Recommendation B, as set out in the committee report, taking into account the amendments to Conditions 12 and Condition 21 and to the drawing schedule as detailed in the extras report. So just moving very briefly on to the extras report, hopefully you've all had the opportunity to read that. I've just summarised the updates. These are all in the extras report, as I said. So the first one that we received a comment from Councillor Snart on Tuesday, I think. So I've just provided a bit of an update on that. Just update 2 relates to the nationally described space standards. In the report, at the time of writing the report, it was believed that none of the properties would comply with those standards, but actually it's since come to light that 19 of them would. So whilst there's still a discrepancy, there is still a conflict, the level of harm is less than first envisaged. In terms of the new pedestrian and cycle link, I put in the report that officers were currently considering how best to secure the footpath, which let me just show you where it is on the site plan. Where's my pointer? Here we go. It's in the southwest corner here. So an update provided on the course of action officers recommend. We think a condition would be sufficient in this case. There's an amendment to Condition 12. It's all in the extras report, an amendment to Condition 1 and an amendment to the drawing schedule in Recommendation B. Just to add that, this is a verbal update that's not previously been reported. Because the site plan, the proposed site plan has been updated recently.
Yeah. I'm just passing over the chair to. Yeah, or just break.
Just break for 2 minutes.
Yeah, break for 2 minutes while I go. Sorry.
I just need to go to the loo. It should only be 2 minutes.
My apologies, members of the Planning Committee. We're just going to speed ahead now.
Okay, right, sorry. I'll just literally start back at the extras. I won't be, I promise you I'm nearly coming to the end of my presentation. So yeah, just as I said, I was running through the updates. Really, I just wanted to say the final update that's not been reported is that because and this has been reported, the site plan, the proposed site plan has been updated. I noticed there's a couple of conditions that refer to the previous version. So we just need to make sure we refer to the correct drawing. These are all very minor changes, but just to make sure that the conditions are precise. And you'll be pleased to know that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. We have some speakers for this item. And the first of those is Mr. Rob Thorley, applicant from Gelson Homes. Is he with us? Are you familiar with the equipment? Thank you. You have 3 minutes to speak. When there only 1 minute remains, our Democratic Services lady will tell you, and that's it. Off you go.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and good evening, members of the Planning Committee. This application is submitted by Gelson Homes, a family-owned and run house builder based just down the road on Loughborough Road in Leicester. Gelson's been building popular family homes in and around Loughborough and Leicestershire for over 130 years and employs over 600 local people in a variety of roles and trades. This application seeks to bring forward development on one of the Council's preferred sites for development, having the benefit of a proposed allocation in the emerging local plan. The proposals have been with the Council now for just over 3 years. In that time, the proposal has been extensively revised in discussions with your officers, resulting in what they and us agree will produce a high quality and sustainable development. The proposals will make the most of and protect the site's landscape and ecological features and will focus views through to Bradgate Park. As you've heard, the development will deliver a range of 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 bedroom homes with a policy compliant 30%. That's 15 of the 48 units being affordable. The development will also deliver benefits to the wider community, including financial contributions to healthcare, outdoor sport, provision for children and young people, libraries, waste, allotments and sustainable travel. The development is also sustainably located on the edge of Anstey and is very close to Walden Hill Primary School and the Martin High School, both of which have the capacity to accept pupils from the development. Gelson's very keen to press ahead with the delivery of these much needed new market and affordable homes, and accordingly, I respectfully ask that the members endorse the recommendation of your officers and resolve to grant planning permission this evening. Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Thorley. Our second speaker is Mr. Glyn McAllister on behalf of Anstey Parish Council. Mr. McAllister, are you okay using the equipment there? Thank you. You have 3 minutes to speak, and then when you have 1 minute remaining, the Democratic Services lady will let you know.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Thank you, Chair. Good evening, all. Anstey Parish Council has objected to the proposed development on a number of grounds as listed on pages 24 to 26 of the committee report. I don't intend to deal with each and every one of the objections as the report covers many off. I would, however, comment that, having sat here earlier, that the officer's presentation did not include a weighted balance as the previous ones, and I think that's not particularly helpful on such a complicated application. The key issue I'd like to deal with, which we do not agree with the officer's conclusions, relates to highways. The report states that the local Highways Authority considers that the cumulative effects of this application, together with other developments allocated in the draft local plan, would derive a severe residual impact on the transport network, should this not be mitigated by the delivery of appropriate transport infrastructure, and that granting permission for the application now would predetermine decisions about scale, location and or phasing, which must be taken in the context of the local plan examination, and if successful, adoption. Further, the local Highways Authority set out in their view, determining the application in advance of the local plan examination being concluded and the inspector's report received will be likely to prejudice the process for ensuring that the local plan's growth strategy is sound. It therefore recommends it should be treated as premature and either not determined or refused. We agree. The local plan, which is likely to be adopted in the near future, recognises that the cumulative impact of potentially over 1,000 new homes in Anstey and further developments around the north of Leicester cannot be ignored. A main modification of the local plan to policy DS3 HA43 states a master plan to be agreed to include delivery of arrangements for the whole allocation in order to achieve comprehensive development that is integrated with the delivery of necessary infrastructure across the development as a whole, and so that the timing of the delivery of the new primary school and transport links to reduce highway impacts and maximise potential to use sustainable travel options. Although not specific to this site, it is relevant as it's the other large application elsewhere in Anstey. This local plan refers to development of the north of Leicester transport strategy. We've not seen that yet. Nobody's even started writing it. So we believe that this is premature to pass this now, bearing in mind that there will be further houses built around Anstey. We've had 600 in the last 10 years. This is apparently another small addition to that. I'd also like to make comment about the proposed financial contributions for open space. It's proposed that these be used either on Pollard's Way or other suitable sites in Anstey. However, the draft Section 106 agreement already says Pollard's Way. We would prefer that to be dealt with elsewhere in Anstey under the auspices of the Parish Council, because the current Fairhaven Farm development is run by a private facilities management company who have a history to date of failing to deliver previously agreed facilities without child intervention, but who also charge residents on the Fairhaven estate a management fee far in excess of what the Parish Council charges in council tax. In summary, we believe this application is being rushed through and should wait until the local plan is in place and be dealt with accordingly. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Our third speaker is Ward Councillor, Councillor Baines.
Thanks very much, Chair. Councillor Taylor and I would like to object. It is flashing. I wondered why it was flashing. Okay. Councillor Taylor and I would like to object to the planning application because, in our view, the development adds further pressure, as you've already heard, given the overdevelopment of the village to the Nook roundabout, which is really not geared up to cope with the extra traffic. And that's highlighted equivocally by the local transport authority. So in our view, the extra 48 houses will bring significant extra traffic. We strongly object to Gray's View being the access road to this development. It's simply not built for this amount of traffic. We have strong objections to the access road covering the footpath. And it seems that the LCC agrees with this as the local transport authority. This footpath is a safe walk to school at present, and it leads onto an open space and onto the park. And it's used by children of all sorts of different ages. Presently, there are no moving vehicles in this area, so changing this does present, in our view, a very considerable safety risk. We believe children walking along the footpath will not be looking out for traffic, and we think that changing that will bring about an accident, and that the chances of that are very significant. And in fact, the local transport authority does talk about head-on collisions and the possibility of head-on collisions. So we think traffic calming measures would not be sufficient to stop children running in front of vehicles to enter a playground. That sort of thing is common. That said, if the committee insists on passing this application, then we think that the traffic calming measures must be put in place as a condition to ameliorate this risk. But we do think it's a very significant risk. Consequently, we urge committee members to turn down this application on the basis that if the developers insist, of course, that the access beyond Grays Road, as they have, and given the dangers of installing that access as an existing footpath already crosses it, and that's linked to a children's play area, that committee members think twice about for children's safety and refuse the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, that's the speakers. The committee needs to consider the application as presented by the planning officer and the speakers. If you'd like to comment on this application, can you please raise your hand to indicate? We got one. Brenda. Is it just David, Brenda and Lee? And Julie? Right. So you first, right?
Thank you, Vicky. Can we just clarify what percentage of affordable homes we have on the application, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. There will be a total of 15 affordable homes, which is 31% of the total, which is policy compliant.
Thank you.
The next person on my list to speak is Councillor Seaton.
Thank you, Chair. I just can't get my head around the fact that a footpath is now being used as a vehicle way. Or have I misheard? Please, could I have some clarity there?
Through you, Chair, a footpath won't be now used as a vehicular access. The vehicular access will cross the footpath. So it's not there now, but it will cross over the footpath.
Oh, okay. So I misheard this. I'm flashing.
Oh, that's because I'm on.
Okay. So it's that it will. So it's what I can see that the path that the. So at the moment, if you move your cursor down into the other development, that is a continuation of the vehicular route. Okay. And the problem, because I was going to say, well, why are we using that as the vehicular route, not the one at the end? But of course, we'd still be crossing a footpath. So I understand that the mapping now. So thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker I have on list is Councillor Snart.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Two bits for me. The first thing is, again, I'm not happy with the market housing mix. Again, we're loading this again to the top end of 4-bed and 5 plus, or 4 and 5. And when we look at 2-bed, which in my view we should be looking, and I think it's quite right when we look at the information from the borough, that we should be looking to get 2-bed installed in our development. And we're looking now at 15% where it should be 30. So I have real issues with that. I have had this before, and we seem to come quite often to planning meetings and see that the housing mix for the market housing mix is loaded towards the upper end. And I think this is detrimental to first-time buyers. And I really don't like the way that we are doing that. And it would be interesting to know, I know it's something that we should do across the borough, and it should be nice if you have those figures tonight, how we're actually doing across the borough. I would be quite interested to know how we actually look at that, because we always put down that this is not an individual site, it's the way we operate through the borough. So if you've got those figures to say how we're doing across the borough, to reinforce what I'm saying, because I've been here quite some time and it always seems to be that we're loading at the top end of the market range. Said on that, I'm really grateful to the case officer, Victoria, for letting me have sight of the transport technical notes, because in there it says previously required commitment developments are taken into consideration. Now, I've really gone and sorted and said that it doesn't actually accord with everything. There's not the 3,000 new homes indicated at Aston Green in Leicester. And it is one of the developments, this large development, that does have an impact on Anstey. And that is in my view, and I understand that even some contributions have come from that development onto the Cropston Road for a pedestrian crossing. So I'm not saying that, in my view, that it is. It's actually, I think, committed in terms of that should be included when we look at the impact that it's having on the Nook in Anstey. The Nook in Anstey is a real issue. Everything has to go through the Nook. You cannot get into Anstey without coming through the Nook. And all these extra developments are having an effect on the Nook. I know that the highways have said that they agree and it should be okay with this development, but they haven't taken into account the impact it'll have from the 3,000 new homes. I'm not saying that is going to be everything coming through Anstey, but it will have an effect and it should be taken into account. So therefore, I find it very difficult to, at the moment, support this, but I would like to think we could defer it to get some more information about the development at Ashton Green in the city, to the actual amount of traffic that's coming from there and how it affects the Nook in Anstey. Because at the moment, I don't think we're doing like for like, apples and pears. We need to actually understand how this is developing and how we should actually go forward with the traffic arrangements within Anstey. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. The next person on my speakers list is Councillor Palmer. Oh, do you need? Yeah, we do. Do you want the officer to come back with a response now? Yeah.
It's something that I think is not quite right at the moment, and I don't want to refuse it in terms of that, but I think we owe it to everybody to say that we've got the right information, we're making decisions on the right information, and I can't see where Ashton Green is actually part of that decision-making process, in my view.
If I could come back to you on the 2 points that you've made. The first point was about the market housing mix, and if I could please refer members to the table in paragraph 9.7.5. This sets out the market housing mix, hopefully in an easy to read format. Just for clarification, because I know you've obviously got concerns, Councillor Snart, about the larger units. Just wanted to say that nearly 70% of the market housing would be 2 and 3 bed properties. 33% would be 4 bed plus, which equates to 11 of the 33. And so, you know, kind of, I think in this case, actually, the majority will be 2 and 3 beds, which is, you know, kind of the smaller units. Also like to reiterate the saved policy, CS3 of the core strategy, and the emerging policy, H1 of the draft local plan, all allow for consideration of other factors, such as the character of the area. The emerging policy also requires local housing needs, economic conditions, viability, and therefore, you know, there are other things you do need to consider when looking at the housing mix. Now, obviously, Councillor Snart referred to the Henner for the 2 beds, which is 30%. That's our evidence. But actually, the preferred mix, as set out in the emerging policy, H1 of the draft local plan, is 20 to 30%. So there has that scope for that flexibility. Likewise, for the 3 bed, the preferred mix in the emerging policy is 45 to 55%. In this case, the scheme would provide 52% 3 beds, so it falls actually within the emerging policy requirement. The 2 beds falls just under, so there is that deviation, and it is accepted and acknowledged and counted as a harm. So it kind of also, in terms of the character of the area, the market housing mix of the adjacent Bloor homes consists of, it was 27% 2 beds, 43 3 beds, and 30% 4 beds. So it's very similar mix. So it's not too dissimilar in respect to over 2/3 or just under 2/3 have 2 and 3 beds and 30% have 4 beds. So it is acknowledged it doesn't strictly accord with the most up-to-date evidence, but there is flexibility within the policies. Turning to the impact upon the Nook and the comments about deferring the application for evidence of the Ashton Green development, the committed developments have been agreed with the local highway authority to be considered, and this obviously wasn't included. I think when the junction capacity assessment was carried out of the Nook from this particular development, the scheme that's before you, the assessment concluded that, which was done as part of a modelling exercise, that the impact from this development is highly unlikely to be noticeable from the, so I would be very cautious about requiring further information about Ashton Green, given that an assessment's been agreed with the local highway authority and a capacity assessment's been carried out. So the committed developments have been agreed, the capacity junction has been carried out and obviously found to be highly unnoticeable. This is a relatively small scheme, we're talking 48 units. And I think it would be, I'm not sure whether it would be something the local highway authority would support requesting that. I would also like to highlight that National Highways were consulted on the application, and they confirmed that following a review of the trip generation and trip distribution, they had no objection, as I don't think it would have a severe impact on the strategic road network. So we have actually consulted National Highways and they have commented on this application. I hope I've answered your questions, Councillor Snott, but please do come back if you have any more.
Just in my view, that we haven't actually taken Ashton Green into account, even on all the information, and it does say on the actual information that was sent it from 2023, it doesn't even mention that. It mentions everyone within the actual Anstey area, but it doesn't mention Ashton Green, which will have an impact, and I don't think it's actually been in part, and it's not been part of the calculation. I'll leave it at that.
Do you need to come back on that, Miss Stone? No. Okay, our fourth speaker is Councillor Palmer.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to reiterate Councillor Snott's concerns about the Nook. I do think that it's crazy as it is. I think it'll only get worse. And also, Anstey's seen quite significant development over the last few years, but infrastructure, local amenities haven't kept up with the amount of building that's gone on around Anstey. And there doesn't seem to be any plan to increase those amenities. So I'm worried on that front as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there anyone else? Oh, you wish to come back?
Thank you, Chair. Just really to say there is a section on the impact upon Anstey as a service centre in the committee report where I've looked into the infrastructure, like the education. The local education authority have confirmed there are existing places to accommodate the pupil yield from this development at both the primary and the high school. There's also, as part of the proposal, there's obligations, contributions, so the development will contribute towards the healthcare provision. There will be contributions to, obviously, libraries, waste, as in financial contribution. These have all been agreed with our colleagues at Leicestershire County Council. There'll be a contribution towards allotments, on-site public open space and provision for children and young people. So, kind of as part of the development, they're mitigating the harm or, the impact from the additional people who may live in the village by providing obligations to accommodate their residents.
Thank you. Councillor Corey Losley.
Thank you very much, Chair. So I want to talk about highways, and the county highways have said an awful lot on this application. I think it's the most I've ever seen them say anything. Plans. Specifically, I'm just not sure I'm fully understanding it. I don't know about anyone else, but I could benefit with the officer explaining it simply to me. Is on page 167, the second paragraph of the county highways report, they're suggesting that we defer this because they're concerned that it will prejudice some decision making in the local plan, and that if it is approved ahead of the local plan being adopted, that there won't be, as Councillor Palmer said, there won't be sufficient transport infrastructure to support it. I assume by that, like, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, reading between the lines, are they saying we need the SIL for this? Because otherwise the burden on the road network is going to be unsustainable. I know that they then go on to say there won't be a problem in the NUC, and it's all very confusing. So I would appreciate a little bit of like a plain English explanation on what is meant there, because it's bothering me.
Ooh. Through you, Chair. So the sort of information to answer that query is in paragraph 9.29 of the committee report. I'll very happily just highlight the key areas. So in common with the comments from, I don't know if anyone remembers last spring and summer, the local highway authority have raised the same concern about being contrary to the spatial strategy because of the cumulative impact. As set out previously, the law requires planning applications to be determined having regard to the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. A position that effectively puts an embargo on development until the examining inspector's report is issued undermines this principle. And the NPPF is very clear on prematurity and how to assess applications on prematurity. So in answer to your question, I've set out about the development. So the transport statement and the transport update with the application does not identify any causation or mitigation towards severe cumulative impact. As mentioned previously, National Highways have raised no objections to the application. And also now the inspector's letter has been received following the hearings in April this year. It supports the progress of the local plan and SIL, such that significant weight can be accorded to the emerging policies. So we think that there's no basis to support the local highway authority's position that the application should be treated as premature and not determined or refused on the grounds of prematurity. It was the same situation we had last June and July on a number of applications, and we took this position then. It's very hard to, there's a high bar for prematurity, and we just don't think that, this is something we can support at this time.
Okay, so that explains the prematurity aspect of it. What about it prejudicing the decision making in the local plan? Like, are we concerned about that? What's the deal with that?
Through you, Chair. No, we're not concerned about it undermining the local plan process. We are working with the County Council to bring forward a community infrastructure levy, and we are expecting to publish a draft charging schedule very soon, which will set out how contributions will be derived from the balance of sites that are in the local plan. It is common knowledge and understanding that even if all the sites in the local plan were able to contribute towards a community infrastructure levy, they wouldn't generate enough receipts to meet the full cost of what the County Council says is necessary to mitigate this cumulative amount of growth that comes out of the local plan, and as a consequence of that, public subsidy will be required to match the receipts gained. What we're talking about here is a small development of 44 units, and on its own, it's not going to make a significant difference to that global figure that we're chasing as to authorities. I mean, the council has been very careful about the way that it deals with this issue, including taking extensive legal and counsel advice to advise it on the way forward. And as my colleague has just said, we don't think that a position of prematurity can be sustained, particularly in light of the fact the County Council hasn't provided any specific evidence of causation through their representations. And actually, it's still open to the County Council to submit that evidence and to make requests through using Section 106, and they've chosen not to. So the opportunity is there for them. It'll remain open to them until the point at which, if members are minded to approve this application tonight, the decision is issued following the negotiation of the legal agreement in due course. So, we don't think it will undermine the local plan.
Okay, thank you for that. So I've just come back to that briefly, Chair, and then I've got one more slightly different thing to come back on, and then I shall turn. Okay, if we've had legal counsel and we're confident that that won't be the case, then fine, I'm happy with that. And am I right then to think that if we do approve this application tonight, that it won't be covered by the SIL when it is in force?
Through you, Chairs, as I said, the work on the community infrastructure levy is progressing, and if the community infrastructure levy is adopted before this application is determined, and what I mean by that is if it takes a long time to negotiate the Section 106 agreement and the decision hasn't been issued before the community infrastructure levy is adopted, then there is still potential for this scheme to have to make a contribution through the community infrastructure levy towards this strategic growth. So it's a race against time, really, at this point.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. And then the other thing I was just going to ask is the access is a little bit dubious going over that footpath, and I understand that there'll be some speed mitigation for cars going over it in the form of a speed bump. I can't remember what the exact terminology is. So that's fine, I guess. But what about the footpath? Is there somewhere in the conditions that we've got here, is there going to be signage? I'm just thinking if I was riding my bike along that footpath, not really paying attention, and then all of a sudden there's now a road intersecting it, was there going to be something there to make pedestrians or cyclists aware that they're about to cross a road, essentially?
Through you, Chair. I did mention it in my presentation, but I can imagine it was quite dull to listen to, so I'll say it again. There is going to be, to ensure there's not, like you said, the cyclists or the scooters, the wheelers going sort of over the raised table, there's going to be some additional safety measures such as bollards or a staggered barrier. I actually think staggered barrier would probably work better because that really does make, cyclists stop because you have to go in and out. This will be secured as part of the highways agreements. I think it's either going to be Section 278 or Section 38. But if member, this will be secured. But like I said, I would probably prefer the staggered barriers. So we can always potentially recommend a condition that those details are secured as part of this application as well, just to ensure we get the staggered barriers, not the bollards. But obviously that's just something that we could do if members think it would be advisable to do so.
Okay, understood. And if we do have a motion to approve this, to accept officers' recommendations, then yeah, I'd be happy with that advice. I think that would be a good thing to include. Thank you.
Excuse me, can I add to that that they are, we had some barriers similar to that installed in places in my town. Can you make sure that it's accessible by prams and wheelchairs? Councillor Seaton.
Thank you, Chair. My query was answered from highways anyway.
Thank you. Councillor Smidovic.
Thank you, Chair. Page 165, I've been looking through the following policies which are considered appropriate to this application, and I've come down to policy H2, housing for older people and people with disabilities. So which houses in this setup are for disabled or very elderly? Because I can't see any bungalows. I do see one bedroomed properties, assuming they've got steep stairs. So I'm just a little bit curious as to how that one is being applied.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I'm not an expert, so I don't, I hope I don't get this incorrect, but there are building regs now that require certain measures in place to ensure for accessibility. And I know that all of these properties will comply with that accessibility level. It used to be like standards for lifetime homes, and that's been replaced by, I think it's M2 regulations. So that's how, like, obviously the properties will comply with the accessibility. I mean, there aren't, as you've said and highlighted on site, any bungalows on this site, but all properties will comply with those regulations, and they're governed by building regulations, not planning law.
We've got a mix of 5-bedroomed houses. Are they going to be the same garden size as those with 2 bedrooms? Okay, I'm thinking larger family.
Through you, Chair, I'll try my best to identify the 5 beds, and there's not many on the development. In fact, I think there's 2. So I showed you the design of one of those, and they're the ones with the detached or attached garages here. So we've got one plot here, and there's another plot here. And I think those are the only 5-bedroom properties on the site. As you can see, the garden space is proportionate to the size of the property. So I don't know if you can tell with my pointer, but this is the garden associated with this property. The same here. It's obviously the full width of the house and the depth. If we move to some of the smaller properties, as you can see here, these are 2 semis and they've got the smaller gardens. So whilst there is actually no policy that requires minimum standard garden size, it's about ensuring sufficient amenity space, as you say. So as most developments, you find the garden sizes are proportionate to the number of bedrooms in the property, and that is the case in this site.
Councillor Seaton.
Thank you. I haven't had anything to the contrary, so I'm going to go with officer's recommendation that this proposal is passed.
It's your proposal. Are you happy for us to amend the proposal to include the staggered barriers on the footpath?
Yes, I am.
Is that all right? So do we have a second of thank you, Councillor Matthews. Do you wish to speak as well?
So I was going to propose we put an amendment in for that, but it's obviously been dealt with. One of the things we heard a lot of about this application, it's only a small application, is it? 47 houses, was it? 48. Okay, and they're all relatively small houses, and there was a lot of emphasis on the traffic around the Nook and everything going through the Nook. Where this plot is the furthest possible point away from the Nook. Now, I know you say that it's the busiest area of Anstey, the Nook, and it is, no doubt about it. It can get a bit hairy around there. But from my own experience, properties in this area of Anstey aren't always going to be travelling through the Nook at all. I mean, the vast majority of these properties, cars from these properties, are not going to be doing that. They'll be heading down the Anstey Lane towards, what's the village? Not Cropston, Thurkeston, and then down the Greengate Lane, which is a route that I take all the time. And properties heading up towards Newtown Linford, they're not going to go anywhere near the Nook. They'll go down the Link Road. So I think the amount of cars increases going down the towards the Nook is just going to be non-existent. It's not going to make the blindest bit of difference. So I'm not really too concerned with the traffic increases around the Nook. We've heard from the head of planning that he has no concerns at all that this is going to have any impact whatsoever on the financial and the sorry, local plan. That's the word. Thank you. And in my view, that's good enough for me. I'm not too concerned either myself, but I'm quite happy to second this proposal that we accept officer's recommendation with the amendment for the barrier. Just a quick one: the traffic calming measures coming into the new development, barrier bumps in the road. What do you call them? That's the one. Sleeping policemen. That's a good word. Yeah. How many exactly are there going to be, and what are they going to be? Now, you see these bumps in the road where you have a bump in the road, you drive about 10 metres, then you go down another one. It doesn't really slow the traffic down. Is it going to be an actual proper speed bump which slows the traffic down, or is it going to be these ones where you just drive, you almost drive straight over it, that we see going through Thurcaston? Do you know what I mean? Like those rubber things in the road, because they're useless.
Through you, Chair. They're going to, so in essence, it's here, it's going to be a raised table. So it's not going to be those, I'm not going to say what I think of them, rectangular things that always ruin my suspension of the car. It's going to be, can you see the distance is quite long? If you can you see my pointer here, look.
Yeah, see, that's exactly what I don't like, because I see them on the entrance to my estate and they're absolutely useless. They're no good. You need proper bumps in the road that actually slow the traffic down, because they just don't slow the traffic down. They don't. I don't want to see them going up, especially going up towards a footpath. Even if it has got a staggered barrier, I think you need proper sleeping policemen.
Could I come back to you through you, Chair? I think this has been, obviously what we have is this has been agreed with the local highway authority as the most appropriate measure to slow the traffic down. It's in accordance with their guidance, the standards, so, and there has been extensive discussions to get to this point. This has been agreed. So whilst I understand your concerns about the actual practicality, I'm not, kind of this is kind of been agreed with the local highway authority and to be the most appropriate to slow the traffic down to at least 15 miles an hour or under. And of course, we are talking about, it's not obviously a main road, we're talking about 48 dwellings will be using that, the trip generation. So it's, it's not obviously one of our main, sort of A roads or B roads. So I understand your view, but I think it'd be very difficult to change this because this is in accordance with the local highway authority's guidance. Sorry.
Councillor Inslee.
Yeah, there's been quite a lot of concern, and I've been thinking about it a bit more. This crossing of the popular pedestrian bicycle route that we saw a lot of people on when we visited today. Would it be possible to add to that by having a zebra crossing that would give priority to the path users over the vehicles? And can we, if people support that, can we add that to the suggestion?
Through you, Chair, this is always very tricky, this stuff. As my colleague was just explaining, this particular issue, the access point in the site, has been the subject of very significant scrutiny by the local highway authority and various amendments by the applicant to arrive at a road and an access point which is considered to be safe and satisfactory. Had the local highway authority thought that it would be necessary to put a crossing here, they would have asked for it. they always try to get a balance between the need to provide pedestrian priority or safe passage with the need to allow the throughput of cars without the pedestrian crossing actually becoming a hazard in its own right. You know, drivers stopping inadvertently because they've seen the crossing point too late or what have you. So I think that we need to be cautious about thinking that we can apply conditions seeking something which the Highway Authority in its own right doesn't think is necessary. You know, in terms of whether we could support that as a condition, I think I'd struggle to advise you that that was going to meet the tests. So, I mean, this road is quite interesting. There is a little bit of deviation from the Highway Authority's normal design standards in the Highway Design Guide, particularly on the bit that runs along Grey View. But there is a benefit by virtue of, I mean, currently it's like a private drive, if you see what I mean. So, what's being proposed, as I understand it, is to create a road to full highway standard, which would then be adoptable by the local highway authority, which is an improvement, and along with the pavement along the what is in effect the eastern side of that diagram, and also that interface with where the recreation route crosses. The treatment of that and the raised table has been very carefully thought about and designed to slow traffic down to a level that the Highway Authority is comfortable with for the scale of development that's on the other side, you know, that's being proposed. I think it's right that, you know, members have concerns about the interface between wheeled users of that recreation route and the suggestion of having a staggered barrier. And so you've been clear about that, and that's something that I think is worth having a standalone condition on. And what I'd suggest through you, Chair, is I know that Councillor Seaton has moved the recommendation with the addition of that condition, but this precise wording of it is perhaps, if it's in the committee's gift to agree, is delegated to officers to prepare that precise wording in consultation with the Chair and Vice Chair tonight to make sure we get that right, because it might be that a staggered barrier isn't quite the right design solution. It needs to be something else that you know, the local highway authority might suggest as being like a standard model for this kind of thing. So we need to think very carefully about that. But it might be that the condition would say something like the applicant to submit details of an appropriate form of pedestrian barrier to be considered and approved by the local planning authority in consultation with the highway authority or something to that end. So we've got that opportunity to explore what would be the most appropriate solution to meet members' concerns.
Could I add? Sorry, I'd just like to add that all the concerns that you've raised, I have discussed with the Highway Authority myself. I've already sort of challenged their comments to make sure that they're comfortable and confident that this is acceptable, because as I said on site, you know, and it's in my report, you know, I do share concerns about that conflict. But the Highway Authority, they've had, like I said, they've given me that assurance that it has been considered and explained the technical side to me that has made me as an officer feel confident that that is the right, you know, they have considered this in full detail.
Can I just check from the picture that we've got on at the moment, is there any safeguarding, like you've got the rubber table for the cars to go across, is there anything at all that's been suggested by Highways for the footpath bit?
Yes, so they've suggested some form of sort of bollards, and as I mentioned, I'd had a discussion with the highway officer and he said all staggered barriers, which is what we're looking at doing. You know, so yes, they definitely think something needs to be in place, but it's just agreeing what the detail.
So would we go with your proposal amended to say allow delegated powers for planning officers to define the wording for safety barriers on the footpath, which will be wheelchair and pram accessible. Yeah, well, you think, wouldn't you? Just safety barriers on the footpath then.
No, if you just say barriers, it'll confine it to just barriers. It might be bollards.
Maybe,
You might decide that is better.
Chair, maybe appropriate safety measures.
Appropriate safety measures.
Appropriate safety measures.
Lovely. On the footpath, I'm on about though, not the road. Yeah. So shall we say that we go with officers' recommendation for your proposal and allow delegated powers to planning officers to define the wording for safety measures on the footpath? Is that right? All in favour? Nine.
That's 9, Chair.
All,
2 against, so that motion is carried.
my goodness, it's a long one. So now, with that over, we're going to item 6, which is the list of applications determined under delegated powers and which came as a supplement. It was called a supplement this time, wasn't it? Does anyone have any questions or comments they wish to make? Councillor Smidovic.
Yeah, unfortunately, I do have a query. It may possible that Rory might be able to answer, but on P22, it's the last one on the Loughborough Southfields list. It's got Coach House, full application, 55 to 57 Park Road, and the conversion of that coach house to 2 residential dwellings. And it's a revised scheme, and it's granted conditionally and under officer delegation. But I don't know if Rory saw that, because I would love to know what the parking is going to be, because we've got such a problem there. And it would be nice to be able to be assured that the officer had been out and looked, well, knowing who the officer is and having a bit of an update.
Mr. Worley, join us.
Right, so yeah, I signed this one off. Mr. Liggins was the case officer. The amendment in question was just some design changes, windows, things like that. They'd bricked up a window that should have been a proper window, so it just secured that difference. So made no changes from the original position in terms of parking, which I think was a space or 2 in the courtyard that it forms part of.
And that's next to the house that's got 23 rooms in it.
I don't know the site well enough to answer that point.
So I was curious.
Councillor Snart.
Just very briefly, just for interest, when you see these now, and certainly the bits that come through about planning applications, you get a lot of mismatch on the first bit, and that they're not assigned to each ward. Is there a reason for that? Or am I a bit thick tonight?
Oh. Sorry, Dave, can you just point me to where you're referring on the page numbers or something?
When you look at the first lot of applications, they're all mixed up. The first one's Surmiston, the next one is Woodhouse, the next one is Bristol, and it comes like that now.
Yeah.
On, the weekly planning application. And I just wondered why it was.
Yes, I share your mystery, Councillor Snart. What it is I know you've been in touch with us recently, highlighting problems of being able to access Planning Explorer and being able to download documents and see documents. And it's fair to say that, you know, the officers are struggling with quite a few glitches with the new back office system, which actually celebrated its anniversary just a couple of days ago. But it is problematic, and there are a number of pernicious bugs in the system that have been plaguing us for a year, and the supplier, NEC, is seeking to address. But it seems no rhyme or reason for it. You know, 1 month you'll get all the, you know, things in the right order on the applications in the right order in the right wards on the printout, and then another month they're just all over the place, and it's very random and unsatisfactory, if I'm honest. As I say, we're trying to do our best to provide the information, but it feels like we're sort of you know, running uphill with a £110 pack on our backs at the moment.
Even with my loud voice on.
Can we just confirm the date of the next meeting, please?
The next meeting will be held on the 18th of September 2025.